in the fog-shrouded shadows of Blackthorn Manor. A single scream pierces the night, unraveling a web of lies that binds a widow's secrets to a stolen heirloom. Why does a cryptic note in the library whisper of scandal? Who defaced the gallery portrait with rare paint? And what deadly truth lurks in a greenhouse's poison blooms? Hercule Poirot, with his unrivaled mind, steps into a labyrinth of deceit where every guest hides a motive and someone is watching his every move. Can he untangle the truth before the killer strikes again? Chapter 1. The Invitation to Blackthorn Manor. The autumn rain fell in a persistent drizzle, cloaking the Devon countryside in a silver veil as Hercule Poirot's train rattled toward Blackthorn Manor. The carriage, though comfortably appointed, carried the faint mustiness of damp wool and old leather, a scent that mingled with the crisp tang of Poirot's lavender cologne. He sat by the window, his gloved hands folded neatly over a silver-tipped walking stick, his sharp green eyes scanning the blurred landscape. The invitation, penned in elegant but hurried script, lay folded in his pocket, its words etched in his prodigious memory. Monsieur Poirot, your presence is urgently requested at Blackthorn Manor. A matter of utmost delicacy requires your unparalleled discretion. Lady Eleanor Blackthorn. Poirot's mustache twitched as he considered the summons. Lady Eleanor, a widow of considerable wealth and repute, was not known for theatrics. Her late husband, Sir Reginald Blackthorn, had been a titan of industry, his fortune built on shrewd investments and a knack for navigating the murky waters of high society. Yet the letters, tone vague, yet insistent, suggested a mystery that went beyond a mere social faux pas. Poirot's little gray cells hummed with anticipation. The train slowed, and the platform at Blackthorn Halt came into view, a lonely outpost framed by gnarled oaks and sodden hedgerows. A liveried driver, his face half hidden beneath a dripping cap, awaited Poirot with a sleek Rolls-Royce. Monsieur Poirot, I presume, the man said, his voice carrying the clipped efficiency of one accustomed to serving the elite. I'm Grayson, Lady Eleanor's driver. The Manor's a good half-hour's ride. Mercy, Monsieur Grayson, Poirot replied, stepping into the car with the grace of a man who never hurried, yet was never late. Tell me, what is the mood at Blackthorn Manor? One does not summon Hercule Poirot for trivialities. Grayson's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, a flicker of unease betraying his stoic demeanor. It's tense, sir. Guests arrived yesterday, and there's been talk of a missing heirloom. Lady Eleanor's tight-lipped, but the staff's whispering. Poirot nodded, filing away the tidbit. A missing heirloom was a promising start, but the driver's hesitation suggested layers beneath the surface. The car wound through mist-shrouded lanes, past fields where sheep huddled under ancient stone walls, until Blackthorn Manor loomed into view. The estate was a study in Gothic grandeur, ivy-clad turrets, mullioned windows, and a sprawling lawn that seemed to hold its breath under the rain's weight. Yet there was an air of neglect, a cracked gargoyle here, a sagging gate there that hinted at a grandeur fraying at the edges. Grayson ushered Poirot into the entrance hall, where a chandelier cast a warm glow over mahogany paneling and a sweeping staircase. A butler, impeccably dressed, but with eyes that darted like a cornered fox, took Poirot's coat. Lady Eleanor awaits you in the drawing-room, monsieur, he said, his voice smooth but tinged with strain. The drawing-room was a tableau of opulence, velvet drapes, a roaring fire, and a collection of guests who seemed as carefully curated as the antique furniture. Lady Eleanor Blackthorn, a tall woman with silver hair and a regal bearing, rose to greet Poirot. Her eyes, sharp as cut glass, softened with relief. Monsieur Poirot, thank heavens you've come, she said, extending a hand adorned with a single emerald ring. I fear we are entangled in a most distressing affair. Madame Poirot said, bowing slightly. Hercule Poirot is at your service. Pray, enlighten me as to this affair." Lady Eleanor gestured to the assembled company, each of whom regarded Poirot with a mix of curiosity and wariness. "Allow me to introduce my guests. Mr. Julian Warwick, the playwright whose works have graced London's stages." A lean man with a roguish smile and ink-stained fingers nodded, his eyes gleaming with a wit that seemed to dance on the edge of mockery. "Miss Clara Henshaw, governess to my late husband's ward." A young woman with auburn hair and a guarded expression offered a polite curtsy, her hands clasped tightly as if to steady herself. "Mr. Theodore Caldwell, an American entrepreneur with interests in our railways." A broad-shouldered man with a booming laugh and a gold watch chain gave a hearty wave, his confidence bordering on arrogance. And Miss Daphne Lyle, an artist of some renown. Woman in a flowing shawl, her dark eyes distant, inclined her head. Her fingers smudged with charcoal. Poirot's gaze swept over them, noting the subtle tensions. Warwick's sly glance at Clara, Caldwell's too loud chuckle, Daphne's aloof detachment. "Enchant," he said, his voice a velvet blade. "In the matter that requires my presence." Lady Eleanor hesitated, her lips thinning. "A family heirloom, a sapphire brooch, has gone missing. It was last seen in the library 2 nights ago. I suspect it was no accident." The room stirred. Warwick raised an eyebrow. Clara's hands tightened. Caldwell snorted, and Daphne's gaze flickered to the fire. Poirot's mustache quivered. A stolen brooch was a trifle, but Lady Eleanor's unease suggested it was a thread in a larger tapestry. "Tiares interessant," he murmured. "May I see this library?" The library was a cavern of knowledge, its shelves groaning under leather-bound tomes, and the air heavy with the scent of aged paper. A portrait of Sir Reginald glowered from above the fireplace, his stern features softened by the firelight. Poirot's eyes roamed, catching details: a desk with papers neatly arranged, a window slightly ajar, and a velvet cushion on a reading chair, its corner faintly disturbed. "Madame," Poirot said, turning to Lady Eleanor, who had access to this room 2 nights ago. "Any of the guests," she admitted. "We gathered here after dinner. There was an argument." Nothing serious, but voices were raised. An argument. Poirot's tone was light, but his eyes were sharp. "Of what nature?" Lady Eleanor flushed. "Mr. Caldwell proposed a business venture, which Mr. Warwick found amusing. Miss Henshaw tried to mediate, and Miss Lyle was, as usual, silent." Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing the dynamics. He knelt by the cushion, his fingers brushing the fabric. "Tiens," he said softly, extracting a single blue thread. "This is not from the cushion. Perhaps a clue." The guests, summoned to the library, reacted with varying degrees of unease. Caldwell blustered. A thread could be anyone's. Warwick smirked, a detective's flair for the dramatic. "I see." Clara's eyes widened, and Daphne's fingers twitched, as if itching for a sketchbook. Poirot held up a hand. "Mies, Amos, let us not leap to conclusions," Hercule Poirot observes. He reflects, and he deduces. This thread may yet speak. As the evening progressed, dinner was served in a dining room adorned with crystal and silver. The conversation was stilted, each guest wary under Poirot's watchful gaze. Warwick regaled the table with tales of his latest play, a murder mystery. That drew a nervous laugh from Clara. Caldwell boasted of his railway ventures, while Daphne sketched idly on a napkin, her eyes distant. Lady Eleanor, presiding with strained grace, mentioned a recent charity gala, but her voice faltered when Poirot asked about the brooch's history. "It was my mother's," she said quietly. "A gift from a Russian duke. Its loss is personal." Nodded, his sympathy genuine, but his mind alert. After dinner, as the guests retired to the drawing room, he lingered in the library, his fingers tracing the shelves. A faint creak drew his attention to a bookcase where a slim volume of Keats was slightly askew. Behind it, tucked into a crevice, was a folded note. He unfolded it with care, revealing a scrawled message. "The sapphire is only the beginning. Look to the past." The words sent a thrill through Poirot's little gray cells. The note was not a confession, but a taunt, suggesting the brooch's theft was a deliberate act in a larger scheme. He pocketed the note, his mind racing. The past? Whose past? Lady Eleanor's? Sir Reginald's? Or one of the guests? Returning to the drawing room, Poirot found the atmosphere charged. Clara, pale and trembling, stood clutching a silver necklace. "It's gone," she cried. "My necklace. It was on my dressing table an hour ago." The guests erupted in murmurs. Caldwell demanded a search. Warwick quipped about cursed jewels, and Daphne offered a vague condolence. Lady Eleanor looked stricken. Another theft. She whispered. Poirot raised a hand, his presence commanding silence. "Comme si vous plate." Mademoiselle Henshaw described this necklace. "Silver, with a locket," Clara said, her voice shaking. "A gift from my mother. Not valuable, but precious to me." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "To thefts in as many days, yet the items differed in value. A sapphire brooch, a family heirloom, and a sentimental locket random, or calculated." He turned to the butler, who hovered nearby. "Sire, summon the staff. We shall inspect the servants' quarters." The search was swift but thorough, Poirot's meticulous nature leaving no corner unchecked. In a maid's room, tucked beneath the mattress, he found Clara's necklace, its locket gleaming in the lamplight. The maid, a young woman named Betsy, gasped in horror. "I didn't take it, sir. I swear." Poirot's gaze was piercing, but not unkind. "Mademoiselle, tell me, who has been in your room today?" Betsy stammered. "Only Mr. Warwick, sir. He asked for fresh linens this morning." All eyes turned to Warwick, who laughed, a touch too brightly. "Linens? Hardly. I've not set foot in the servants' quarters." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Frame it. Then how do you explain the ink stain on your cuff, Monsieur Warwick?" "The same ink I observed in the library near the desk where the brooch was last seen." Warwick's smile faltered, but he recovered quickly. "A coincidence, surely. I'm a writer, Poirot. Ink is my trade." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. But Hercule Poirot does not believe in coincidences." The necklace was returned to Clara, who clutched it with relief. Poirot, with a flourish, declared the matter resolved. "For now, the locket is restored, mademoiselle, but the sapphire remains elusive." In this note, he produced the cryptic message. Holding it aloft suggests a deeper game. Lady Eleanor's hand flew to her throat. "What does it mean, monsieur?" "Poirot, it means," Poirot said, his voice low and resonant, "that someone in this house plays a dangerous game. But fear not, madame, Hercule Poirot shall unravel this tangle of lies." As the guests dispersed, their faces a mix of relief and suspicion, Poirot lingered by the fire, the note in his hand. The rain had ceased, but the manor shadows seemed to deepen. The sapphire's theft was no isolated act, it was a thread in a web of secrets, and Poirot's little gray cells were already spinning the first strands of truth. Chapter 2. The Shadow in the Fog. The fog draped Blackthorn Manor in a conspiratorial veil, its tendrils curling around the ancient stone walls like the fingers of a restless spirit. Hercule Poirot, his polished shoes dampened by the dew-soaked grass, paused on the winding path through the estate's gardens. The air was heavy, the silence broken only by the distant hoot of an owl and the faint creak of the manor's weather vane. His muffler, meticulously knotted, shielded him from the chill, but it was the atmosphere of secrecy that truly set his senses alight. "The fog," he murmured to himself. "It hides much, but it reveals more to those who know how to look." Poirot. had arrived at the Devon estate that afternoon, summoned by Lady Eleanor Blackthorne, a widow whose cryptic letter spoke of a stolen heirloom, a matter he suspected was merely the surface of a deeper quagmire. Over a tense dinner, he had resolved a trifling affair involving a misplaced necklace, earning Lady Eleanor's gratitude and the wary respect of her guests. Julian Travers, a playwright with a silver tongue. Clara Wren, a governess whose guarded eyes betrayed a hidden burden. Amos Caldwell, an American businessman whose brashness grated against a manner's refined air. And Beatrice Lyle, a reclusive artist whose silence was as expressive as her paintings. Yet, a note, discovered in the library and scrawled with the words, "The truth lies buried," had stirred Poirot's curiosity. Something darker simmered beneath the manor's polished veneer. Now, under the cover of midnight, Poirot prowled the grounds, his cane tapping softly against the stone. The fog, thick as a conspirator's cloak, suited his purpose. At the night, he mused, it is when the masks slip and the little gray cells must be most vigilant. His stroll was no aimless wander. He sought the unguarded moments when secrets spilled like wine from a cracked glass. A murmur of voices, sharp and urgent, pierced the mist from the direction of the rose garden. Poirot moved with the stealth of a cat, his small frame swallowed by the fog. The voices belonged to Travers and Miss Wren, their words laced with venom. "You swore it was over." "Julian," Miss Wren hissed, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. "You promised we'd leave it behind, and we will." "Clara," Travers replied, his smooth baritone fraying at the edges. "But you must be patient. If she suspects—" "Who?" Miss Wren's voice cracked like thin ice. "Who is it? This time, you know who?" Travers snapped, his charm replaced by steel. "Don't play the fool. It doesn't become you." Poirot edged closer, the thorns of a rose bush brushing his sleeve. The fog muffled their words, but the tension was palpable. Shared history, a broken vow, a mysterious she. His mind catalogued every nuance, but a sudden rustle in the undergrowth silenced the pair. Footsteps crunched away, swallowed by the mist. Poirot remained still, his thoughts racing. A lover's quarrel, perhaps, he whispered. Or something more sinister. He resumed his circuit of the grounds, intending to return to the manor, when a scream tore through the night, sharp and chilling. It came from the west wing, where the gallery housed Lady Eleanor's prized art collection. Poirot hurried forward, his cane probing the uneven ground. The fog parted briefly, revealing the manor's silhouette, its windows glowing like the eyes of a wary beast. Inside the gallery, chaos reigned with the decorum of a drawing-room tragedy. Lady Eleanor stood at the center, her silver hair loose beneath a hastily donned shawl, her face a mask of distress. Travers and Miss Wren lingered near the doorway, their earlier discord masked by forced concern. Caldwell, his shirt askew, scowled as if the interruption had ruined a private scheme. Miss Lyle, the artist, stood apart, her thin hands twisting a paint-stained rag, its rise flickering with something Poirot could not yet name. At the heart of the scene was a portrait of Sir Reginald Blackthorne, Lady Eleanor's late husband, now grotesquely defaced. Its canvas bore deep slashes, and crimson paint, vivid as blood, streaked the stern face. Scrawled across it, in jagged letters, was the word Liar. "Mon Dieu," Poirot breathed, stepping forward. His sharp eyes swept the room, noting every detail. Lady Eleanor's trembling hands, Travers's calculated calm, Miss Wren's barely concealed panic, Caldwell's irritation, and Miss Lyle's subtle flinch. "This is no act of idle mischief," he declared. "This is a message, bold and deliberate." Lady Eleanor clutched her shawl, her voice frail. "Monsieur Poirot, who would do this?" That portrait was Reginald's pride mine, too. Poirot knelt beside the canvas, his gloved fingers hovering over the crimson streaks. "The paint," he said. "It is not common. Observe the richness, the texture. This is an artist's pigment, nest CEPA, a rare vermilion, perhaps." His gaze settled on Miss Lyle, whose fingers tightened around her rag. "Mademoiselle Lyle, you are an artist. Tell me, what is this paint?" Miss Lyle's pale cheeks flushed. "I don't know," she stammered. "It might be vermilion, but I haven't painted in days." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile beneath it. "Yet your rag, mademoiselle, it bears stains of this very shade." "A curious coincidence, Nan." A murmur rippled through the group. Miss Lyle's eyes darted to the floor. "I didn't do this," she insisted. "I was in my room, sketching, alone." Poirot's voice was gentle but unrelenting. "Yes, well, no," she faltered. "I stepped outside to sketch the fog. It was inspiring. In this sketch," Poirot pressed. "I didn't finish it," she admitted. "I heard the scream and returned." Poirot nodded, his expression inscrutable. "We shall revisit this, mademoiselle. For now, the gallery must be secured. No one is to touch the canvas." Lady Eleanor nodded, her composure fraying. The group dispersed, casting weary glances, but Poirot lingered, his eyes tracing the slashes in the canvas. They were precise, not wild, suggesting control rather than passion. The word "lia" trembled slightly, as if the hand that wrote it wavered under some unseen weight. "A message," he murmured, "but to whom and why?" He turned to the gallery's windows, now fogged and opaque. The scream, he recalled, had come from outside. Stepping into the damp night, he retraced his path to the west wing's exterior, his flashlight cutting through the mist. Near a rose trellis, he found scuffed earth and a broken twig, signs of a hurried retreat. Kneeling, he examined the soil, his gloved fingers sifting through it. A faint smear of crimson paint stained a leaf, confirming his suspicion. The vandal had fled this way. Back inside, Poirot summoned Miss Lyle to the library, where a fire crackled, casting shadows across the shelves. She entered, her artist's smock replaced by a plain dress, but the nervous twist of her hands betrayed her. Mademoiselle Poirot began, seating himself in a high-backed chair. "You are uneasy. It is natural, perhaps, when one is suspected, but Hercule Poirot seeks only the truth. Tell me of this vermilion paint." Miss Lyle sat, her posture rigid. "I use vermilion in my work," she admitted. "It's rare, expensive, but anyone could have taken it from my studio. I leave it unlocked." "Anyone?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Yet the rag in your hand bore fresh stains. In your alibi it is, how you say, flimsy. A sketch you cannot produce, a walk in the fog no one witnessed." Her eyes flashed with defiance. "I'm not lying. I loved Sir Reginald's portrait. I painted it myself. Years. Mike, why would I destroy it?" Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft but piercing. "Perhaps because it represents a lie. The word liar. It was not written in haste. It was a declaration. Tell me, mademoiselle, what did Sir Reginald do to earn such a title?" Miss Lyle's breath caught, her hands clenching. He was not a good man," she said at last. "He hurt people I cared about. But I didn't deface that portrait. Swear it." Poirot studied her, his mind weighing her words. The passion in her voice rang true, yet her nervous demeanor suggested she hid something. "Very well," he said. "But know this, the truth, it cannot hide in the fog forever." As Miss Lyle left, Poirot's gaze fell on a small table where a glass of brandy sat untouched, its amber surface reflecting the firelight. Beside it lay a book of poetry, open to a marked page. He read the underlined lines, The truth is a shadow, fleeting and cold. A coincidence, perhaps, but Poirot did not believe in coincidences. The following morning, the fog had lifted, revealing Blackthorn Manor's sprawling grounds in sharp relief. Poirot gathered the guests in the drawing-room, where Lady Eleanor served tea with trembling hands. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, "have you made progress?" "Indeed," Madame Poirot replied, his eyes sweeping the room. The vandalism was no act of chance. The paint, it is vermilion, a rare pigment, used by Mademoiselle Lyle. Yet she claims innocence, and I am inclined to believe her partially. Miss Lyle gasped, and Travers raised an eyebrow. "Partially?" he asked, his tone teasing. "That's a delicate way to accuse someone, Poirot." "Not an accusation, Monsieur Travers," Poirot said smoothly. "An observation." The slashes in the canvas were precise, the work of one familiar with a blade. And the word liar, it speaks of a personal grievance. "I wonder who among you held such a grudge against Sir Reginald?" Caldwell snorted. "The man's been dead for years. Why dig up old grudges now?" "'Cause," Poirot said, "the past is never truly buried." The paint, the word, the scream, they are threads in a tapestry of deceit. And I, Hercule Poirot, shall unravel it. Miss Wren's cup clattered against its saucer. "You're saying one of us did it?" Perhaps, Poirot said, his eyes locking onto hers. "Or perhaps an outsider moving through the fog. But the painted points to someone with access to Mademoiselle Lyle's studio." The room fell silent, the weight of suspicion heavy in the air. Poirot rose, his cane tapping the floor. "I shall examine the studio now, Mademoiselle Lyle. You will accompany me." In the artist's studio, a cluttered space filled with canvases and the sharp scent of turpentine, Poirot found what he sought, a jar of vermilion paint, its lid loose, and a knife with a trace of crimson on its blade. Miss Lyle paled. "That's not mine," she whispered. "Someone took it." "Indeed," Poirot said, his voice grave. "Someone who wished to cast suspicion upon you. But who and why?" As they returned to the manor, a new clue emerged. A gardener passing by mentioned seeing a shadowy figure near the west wing the previous night, cloaked in the fog. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The shadow in the fog," he murmured. "It seems our vandal is not yet done." The chapter's tension mounted as Poirot gathered the guests once more, his mind piecing together the puzzle. "The paint, the knife, the shadow," he said. "They point to a truth hidden in plain sight. But fear not, I shall find it." As the guests dispersed, Poirot lingered, his gaze on Miss Lyle's trembling hands. Her reaction to the knife had been genuine fear, yet her silence hid a secret. And in the distance, the fog lingered on the horizon, as if guarding the manor's darkest truths. Chapter 3. The alibi unravels. The morning at Blackthorn Manor broke with a deceptive calm, the kind that cloaks a storm in velvet. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in his pressed suit and polished shoes, stood at the edge of the drawing-room, his sharp eyes scanning the breakfast gathering. The air was thick with the scent of fresh scones and brewing tea. But beneath the clink of porcelain and murmured pleasantries, tension simmered. The events of the previous night, the vandalized portrait in the gallery, its canvas slashed with deliberate malice, had left the guests uneasy, their glances darting like startled minnows. Poirot sipped his tisane, the herbal infusion a small comfort in the chill of the Devon morning. His mind, however, was far from idle. The portrait, a grand depiction of Lady Eleanor's late husband, Sir Reginald Blackthorn, had been defaced with a rare cerulean pigment, a clue that pointed to the reclusive artist, Miss Clara Vane. Her nervous demeanor at the discovery had not escaped him, nor had the cryptic exchange he'd overheard between the playwright, Mr. Julian Harrow, and the governess, Miss Beatrice Lyle. The manor was a tapestry of secrets. and Poirot was determined to unravel its threads. He set his cup down with a delicate clink and addressed the room. "Mies, Amos, I trust you slept well, despite the disturbances of last night. The matter of the portrait demands our attention, and I propose we discuss it openly, for the truth, it hides not in shadows, but in the light of honest discourse." Lady Eleanor, seated at the head of the table, her silver hair catching the morning light, nodded stiffly. "Indeed, Monsieur Poirot, such vandalism is intolerable." "I expect answers." Clara Vane, her thin fingers twisting a napkin, avoided Poirot's gaze. The American businessman, Mr. Theodore Caldwell, leaned back in his chair, his brash confidence undimmed. "Sounds like a prank gone wrong, if you ask me. Kids these days, always stirring up trouble." "There are no children in this house, Mr. Caldwell," Poirot replied, his tone mild, but his eyes piercing. In the paint, it is not the sort one finds in a nursery. It is a rare blend, used by artists of particular skill. Perhaps, Miss Vane, you might enlighten us." Clara's head snapped up, her pale cheeks flushing. I don't know what you mean. I was in my room all evening, painting. I had no reason to touch that dreadful portrait." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Your room, you say? And yet, the gallery is but a short walk from your quarters. Perhaps you took a midnight stroll, inspired by the muse." Her eyes widened, and she stammered, "I was asleep by 11. Ask anyone." "Very well," Poirot said, his voice smooth as silk. "Let us verify this alibi. Mr. Harrow, you were seen near the gallery last night. Did you, perhaps, notice Miss Vane?" Julian Harrow, his charm as polished as his cufflinks, flashed a disarming smile. "I am afraid I was lost in my own thoughts, Monsieur Poirot. Writing a new play. You see insomnia's a cruel mistress." "I didn't see Clara, or anyone else, for that matter." Poirot's gaze lingered on Harrow, noting the faint tremor in his hand as he reached for his coffee. "Curious," he murmured. "Miss Lyle, you were also abroad last night, were you not? A walk in the fog, perhaps?" Beatrice Lyle, her auburn hair pinned tightly, met his eyes with a steady gaze. "I was in the library, reading. I needed air after ... a disagreement. But I saw nothing of the gallery." "A disagreement?" Poirot's tone was gentle, inviting confidence. "With whom, if I may ask?" Beatrice hesitated, her lips parting, then closing. "It was nothing. A private matter." Poirot nodded, filing the evasion away. He turned to Lady Eleanor. "Madame, might I inspect Miss Vane's room? Small formality to put this matter to rest." Lady Eleanor's brow furrowed, but she acquiesced. "If it helps resolve this, yes. Clara, you'll allow it?" Clara's hands trembled, but she nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "I have nothing to hide." The artist's room was a study in contrasts. Vibrant sketches littered the desk, their bold strokes clashing with the drab curtains and faded wallpaper. Poirot's eyes roved over the space, taking in the easel, the scattered brushes, and a small tin of cerulean paint, its lid slightly askew. He lifted it, his gloved fingers careful not to smudge the surface. "This pigment," he said, holding it up to Clara, who stood rigid in the doorway. "It matches the one used on the portrait." "A coincidence, perhaps?" Clara's breath hitched. I use it for my work. It's not uncommon among artists." "Not uncommon, no," Poirot agreed, "but rare in this shade. In the quantity here, it is diminished, as if recently used. Tell me, Miss Vane, what inspires such late-night artistry?" Her composure cracked, her voice rising. "I told you, I was asleep. I didn't touch that painting." Poirot's eyes softened, but his tone remained firm. "The truth, mademoiselle, is a delicate thing. It does not yield to defiance. If you were not in the gallery, where were you truly at midnight?" Clara's shoulders slumped, and she sank onto the bed, her hands covering her face. I was in the conservatory. I couldn't sleep, so I went to sketch the orchids. They are Sir Reginald's favorites were, I hated him, Monsieur Poirot. He ruined my father, drove him to ruin with his schemes. But I swear, I didn't touch that portrait. Poirot studied her, his mind sifting her words for truth. The conservatory was far from the gallery, and her admission, raw with emotion, rang true. Very well, he said. I shall verify this. My mademoiselle, the truth always reveals itself. This conservatory was a glass-domed haven, its air heavy with the scent of damp earth and exotic blooms. Poirot, accompanied by Beatrice Lyle, who had volunteered to guide him, examined the space. A sketchbook lay open on a wrought iron bench, its pages filled with delicate renderings of orchids. The strokes fresh and hurried. These are recent, Poirot noted, tracing a pencil line. Miss Vane spoke the truth about her presence here, but the portrait someone else, perhaps, sought to cast suspicion upon her. Beatrice frowned, her voice low. Why would anyone do that? Clara's harmless, just broken by her past. Poirot's eyes gleamed. It's broken, yes, but harmless. The heart, it can conceal many motives. Tell me, Miss Lyle, this disagreement you mentioned might it shed light on our mystery? Beatrice's lips tightened, but she relented. It was with Julian Mr. Harrow. He knew me years ago, before I came here. He thinks he can use that against me. Use it how? Poirot pressed, his voice gentle but insistent. He thinks I'm hiding something, Kay said, her eyes dropping to the floor. But I'm not. I just want to do my job, teach the children, and be left alone. Poirot nodded, his mind turning. Harrow's charm, it seemed, masked a predatory instinct. But before he could probe further, a cry echoed from the house, a sharp, panicked sound that cut through the morning stillness. They hurried back to the manor, finding Lady Eleanor in the hallway, her face pale. The study key, she exclaimed. It's gone from my desk, and the study door was ajar. Poirot's pulse quickened. The study, locked and rarely used, held Sir Reginald's private papers. He followed Lady Eleanor to the room, where the heavy oak door stood slightly open, its lock unblemished. Inside, the room was untouched, save for a single drawer left askew in a mahogany desk. Poirot examined the lock, his fingers tracing its edges. No signs of force, he murmured. The key was used, and yet you say it was taken. Lady Eleanor nodded. I kept it in a velvet box on my desk. It's gone. Poirot's mind raced. The key's theft suggested intent, but to what end? He turned to the gathered guests, Clara, Julian, Theodore, and Beatrice, now joined by the butler, Mr. Grayson, whose stoic demeanor betrayed a flicker of unease. Mies, Amos, Poirot said, his voice commanding silence. Key does not vanish of its own accord. Someone here took it, and I propose a search not of the heart, but of the practical. Miss Lyle, might you assist me? Beatrice nodded, her expression wary but cooperative. They began with the guest rooms, Poirot's methodical approach leaving no corner unchecked. In Beatrice's room, tucked beneath a folded shawl in her wardrobe, they found the key, its brass surface gleaming accusingly. Beatrice gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. That's not mine. I didn't take it. Poirot held up a hand, his eyes narrowing. Calm yourself, mademoiselle. The key, it is found. But the question is, how did it come to be here? The others gathered, their murmurs of suspicion growing. Julian's voice cut through, smooth and insinuating. Seems pretty clear, doesn't it? She's got something to hide. Beatrice's eyes flashed with anger. You'd love that, wouldn't you, Julian? It's always twisting things to suit your story. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the brewing argument. Enough. The key, it was placed here, I think, to divert suspicion. The lock of the wardrobe, It shows no signs of tampering, and yet the shawl is disturbed, as if hastily arranged. Someone with access to this room and knowledge of Miss Lyle's movements planted this evidence. He turned to Beatrice, his tone softening. "Tell me, mademoiselle, who has been in your room today?" Beatrice hesitated, then said, "Only the maid, this morning, to tidy, and ... Julian. He stopped by earlier, asking about a book I borrowed." Julian's smile faltered. "Now, hold on. I was just being friendly. I didn't touch anything." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Friendly, perhaps. But the truth, it is not so accommodating. Let us examine your room, Mr. Harrow." Julian protested, but Poirot's authority brooked no argument. In Julian's room, Poirot's keen eyes spotted a scrap of paper caught in the seam of a traveling case, a torn corner of a letter, its ink smudged but legible. The words "Trust Fund" and "Reginald" stood out, sharp as a blade. Poirot held up the fragment, his voice low but resonant. "This, Mies Amos, is no coincidence. The key was meant to implicate Miss Lyle, but it has led us to a new thread in our tapestry. Mr. Harrow, perhaps you can explain this." Julian's charm crumbled, his voice tight. "I don't know where that came from. Someone's setting me up." Poirot's eyes gleamed with quiet triumph. "The truth, it unravels slowly, but it unravels nonetheless. Miss Lyle, you were cleared of this theft. But the letter, it speaks of money, of schemes. We shall pursue this further." He turned to Lady Eleanor, presenting the key with a slight bow. "Madame, your study is secure once more. But the mystery, it deepens. I suggest we all remain vigilant." As the guests dispersed, Beatrice lingered, her voice soft. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. I thought they'd all turn against me." Poirot smiled, his eyes warm. "The truth, mademoiselle, is a friend to the innocent. And you, I think, have much to tell me yet. For now, you are my ally in this tangled web." Chapter 4. The ledger's secret. The air in Blackthorn Manor study was thick with the scent of aged leather and polished oak. A sanctuary of secrets nestled within the sprawling Devon estate. Hercule Poirot stood at the center of the room, his small, meticulous hands clasped behind his back, his mustache impeccably trimmed as his gray eyes scanned the towering bookshelves. The morning sun filtered through heavy damask curtains, casting golden slants across a mahogany desk where a single object held his attention, a leather-bound ledger, its edges frayed, its pages whispering of hidden truths. Poirot had discovered the ledger behind a false panel in the study's bookcase, discovery prompted by the torn letter from the previous day, a scrap of vellum with the words, "The truth lies in numbers," scrawled in an unsteady hand. The letter, found in the governess's room and proven to be planted, had set Poirot's mind alight with possibilities. Now, as he opened the ledger, the faint creak of his spine seemed to echo the manor's own reluctance to divulge its secrets. Pages were a labyrinth of figures, meticulously inked in a precise hand, detailing the estate's finances over the past decade. Yet, as Poirot's eyes darted across the columns, he noted irregularities, sums that did not align, entries that vanished into unexplained voids. A pattern emerged, subtle but unmistakable. Funds siphoned from the estate's accounts, disguised as payments to non-existent suppliers. The amounts were modest enough to evade casual scrutiny, but substantial enough to suggest a deliberate scheme. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, his voice a soft cadence in the silent room. "The hand that writes these numbers is clever, but not clever enough to escape Hercule Poirot." He traced a finger along a particularly damning entry, a payment of £500 to a J. Harrow and Sons for estate repairs, dated 3 months prior. No such company existed in the local records, Poirot was certain, for he had already consulted the village's meager directory during his morning inquiries. The signature authorizing the payment was that of Lady Eleanor Blackthorne, but its flourish seemed slightly off, a hesitation in the curve of the E, a tremor in the line. A knock at the study door interrupted his thoughts. Hastings, his loyal friend and confidant, entered, his face flushed from a brisk walk through the manor's grounds. "Poirot, you've been holed up here for hours. Any progress on that letter business?" Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "The letter, mon ami, was but the spark. This ledger is the fire. Come, observe." He gestured to the open book, his finger tapping the suspect entry. "Here lies evidence of a financial deception, cleverly masked but not invisible to the little gray cells." Hastings peered over Poirot's shoulder, his brow furrowing. "Looks like a lot of numbers to me. You saying someone's been stealing from Lady Eleanor?" "Not stealing, Hastings. Manipulating. The theft is subtle, a slow bleed, rather than a brazen robbery. But who and why? That is the question." As they spoke, the study door opened again, admitting Lady Eleanor herself. Her silver hair was swept into an elegant chignon, but her eyes betrayed a weariness that no amount of poise could conceal. She wore a deep emerald gown, its fabric catching the light as she moved, and her voice carried the measured calm of one accustomed to command. "Sir Poirot, I trust you found something of interest." Poirot inclined his head, his expression unreadable. "Madame, this ledger reveals discrepancies that suggest someone has tampered with your estate's finances. A company, J. Harrow and Sons, has received payments for services that, I suspect, were never rendered." Lady Eleanor's hand tightened on the armrest of a nearby chair, though her face remained composed. "That is troubling, Monsieur Poirot. My late husband oversaw the accounts before his passing, and I've relied on Mr. Caldwell to manage them since. Could it be a clerical error?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone neutral but his eyes sharp. "But the signature on these entries is yours, madame. Yet I observe a slight irregularity in the penmanship." "A forgery, perhaps?" Her gaze flickered, a momentary crack in her composure. "A forgery? Surely not. I sign all major transactions myself." Poirot nodded, his mind already racing ahead. "Then we must investigate further. I propose, madame, that we gather the household for dinner this evening. A little test, if you will, to observe the reactions of those who share your table." Lady Eleanor hesitated, then nodded. "Very well, Monsieur Poirot. I trust your judgment." The dining room of Blackthorne Manor was a study in opulence, its long table set with gleaming silver and crystal that caught the candlelight like stars. The guests assembled, their faces a gallery of guarded expressions. Mr. Caldwell, the American businessman, sat with his usual brash confidence, his broad shoulders filling out a tailored suit. The playwright, Julian Marlowe, leaned back in his chair, his charming smile tinged with unease. Miss Clara Henshaw, the governess, sat quietly, her hands folded, her eyes darting to Poirot as if seeking reassurance. The reclusive artist, Evelyn Ward, toyed with her fork, her gaze fixed on the tablecloth. Poirot, seated at Lady Eleanor's right, served them all with the precision of a watchmaker. The meal began with a delicate consomme, but Poirot's mind was on a different course. He had devised a plan of subtle provocation to unsettle the guilty party. As the second course, a roasted pheasant, was served, he raised his glass and spoke, his voice clear and deliberate. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "I have made a discovery today that concerns us all. In the study, I found a ledger revealing payments to a fictitious company, J. Harrow and Sons. These payments, authorized by a signature purporting to be Lady Eleanor's, suggest a scheme to defraud the estate. I wonder who among us might know of such a deception." A ripple of tension passed through the room. Caldwell's fork paused midair, his eyes narrowing. "That's a bold accusation, Poirot. You saying one of us is a thief?" not a thief. Monsieur Poirot replied smoothly. A manipulator. The distinction is important. A thief takes and flees. A manipulator weaves a web, hoping to remain unseen. Marlowe laughed. A sharp, nervous sound. Sounds like one of my plays. But surely, Lady Eleanor, you'd know if someone was tampering with your accounts? Lady Eleanor's lips tightened. I trusted others to manage the details. Perhaps too much. Clara's voice, soft but firm, cut through the silence. Monsieur Poirot, if there's a forgery, could it not be an outsider? Someone with access to the accounts? Poirot's eyes gleamed. A possibility, mademoiselle. But the ledger was hidden, suggesting an intimate knowledge of the manner. No, the answer lies closer to home. Evelyn Ward's fork clattered against her plate, drawing every eye. This is absurd, she said, her voice trembling. Why would any of us risk such a thing? We're guests here, not criminals. Smile was enigmatic. Mademoiselle Ward, even guests have motives. Let us test this theory. He produced a folded document from his pocket, a replica of the ledger's suspect page, crafted by his own hand that afternoon. This is a contract bearing the same signature as the ledger's entries. I ask each of you to examine it and tell me if you recognize the hand. He passed the document to Caldwell first, who studied it with a frown. Looks like Lady Eleanor's signature to me, but I'm no expert. He passed it to Marlowe, who barely glanced at it before handing it to Clara. She hesitated, her fingers lingering on the paper, then passed it to Evelyn, who stared at it as if it were a venomous snake. Poirot watched their reactions, noting the flicker of Caldwell's eyes, the tightness in Marlowe's jaw, the way Clara's hand steadied as she handed off the document. Evelyn's fingers trembled, but she said nothing. When the document returned to Poirot, he folded it and placed it back in his pocket. Most interesting, he said. The signature is a forgery, yet one of you recognized it immediately. Caldwell leaned forward, his voice low. You're bluffing, Poirot. That document proves nothing. On the contrary, Poirot said, angry at being accused. Caldwell slammed his fist on the table, the sound reverberating through the tense silence. You think you can pin this on me with a piece of paper? I've signed plenty of contracts in my time, Poirot, and I know a fake when I see one. He jabbed a finger at the air. It's a setup. Poirot's expression remained serene, his hands folded neatly in his lap. Sir Caldwell, the ledger does not lie, nor does the signature. The forgery is evident. In your reaction, shall we say, it speaks louder than words. A murmur rippled through the table. Lady Eleanor's eyes widened, her composure faltering for a moment. Mr. Caldwell, is this true? Caldwell's face reddened, but his voice was steady. I've made mistakes, Lady Eleanor. I won't deny that. But this is someone framing me. I've handled your accounts honestly. Few creative entries, maybe to smooth out cash flow for a deal in Chicago. But stealing? That's not my game. Poirot raised an eyebrow, his voice soft but piercing. A few creative entries, you say, yet the ledger shows a pattern, monsieur. It's payments to a company that does not exist. And the signature, while skillful, betrays a tremor not found in Lady Eleanor's hand. Perhaps you would care to explain. Caldwell's jaw tightened, but he leaned back, crossing his arms. I'm no forger. Someone's using me as a scapegoat. You want the truth? Look at the others. Wallace got debts up to his ears, and that artist Evelyn Cheese got a grudge against his family that runs deeper than you know. Holland's head snapped up, her eyes blazing. Don't drag me into your mess, Caldwell. I've done nothing but paint and keep to myself. Hollow's laugh was bitter, and I'm just a playwright trying to make a living. If I wanted to rob someone, I'd write a better script than this. Clara's voice was barely above a whisper. Monsieur Poirot, could the ledger have been altered by someone else? Someone not at this table? Poirot's gaze softened as he regarded her. A fair question, Mademoiselle Henshaw. But the ledger was concealed in a hidden compartment, known only to someone familiar with the manor's secrets. The circle of suspicion. It is small. The room fell silent, the weight of Poirot's words settling over the guests like the fog outside. Lady Eleanor rose, her voice steady but cold. Monsieur Poirot, I trust you to resolve this. The estates. Honor and mine depends on it. Poirot inclined his head. Rest assured, madame, the truth will be found. But for now, let us enjoy the dessert. A clear mind requires a satisfied palate. As the guests dispersed after dinner, Poirot lingered in the dining room, his mind turning over the evening's revelations. Caldwell's partial confession had confirmed the ledger's discrepancies, but his insistence on being framed intrigued Poirot. The American's brash demeanor masked a calculating mind, yet his denial of the forgery rang with a hint of truth. Someone else, perhaps, had orchestrated the scheme. Using Caldwell as a convenient target, Poirot returned to the study, the ledger still open on the desk. He examined it again, his fingers tracing the coded entry he had noticed earlier, a series of numbers and letters tucked beneath the column of legitimate transactions. It read, L37K9M2P. At first glance, it seemed a clerical note, but Poirot's instincts told him otherwise. The code was deliberate, a message hidden in plain sight. He sat at the desk, his pencil scratching across a notepad as he tested combinations. The numbers could represent pages or dates, the letters, initials, or locations. After several minutes, a pattern emerged. The numbers corresponded to pages in the ledger, and the letters matched initials of past transactions. L3, page 3, a loan to an unknown party. 7, Kaya payment to a Kensington trust. 9, Emma transfer to a Marwood fund. To Pia deposit from a Prescott. Together, they suggested a network of hidden accounts funneled through the estate's legitimate finances. Poirot leaned back, his eyes gleaming. A conspiracy, he murmured. Not one thief, but many hands, each unaware of the others. The ledger is but the surface of a deeper tangle. He closed the ledger and returned it to its hidden compartment, ensuring it remained secure. Evening had resolved one thread Caldwell's minor fraud, but it had unraveled a larger mystery. The coded entry pointed to a broader scheme, one that reached beyond Blackthorn Manor. Poirot's task was clear: to follow the threads, to untangle the lies, and to expose the mastermind pulling the strings as he left the study. The manor's corridors were silent, the fog outside pressing against the windows like a living thing. Poirot's steps were measured, his mind alight with the challenge. The truth, he knew, was close, but it would require all his cunning to bring it into the light. Chapter 5. The midnight visitor. The clock in Blackthorn Manor's grand hall struck midnight, its chimes reverberating through the silent corridors like a summons from the past. Hercule Poirot, ever alert, sat in his guest room, his small, precise hands folded over a leather-bound notebook. The room, adorned with heavy damask curtains and a mahogany writing desk, felt oppressive under the weight of the estate's secrets. The fog that had cloaked the manor since the previous evening pressed against the windows, a spectral shroud that seemed to whisper of hidden truths. Poirot's mind, however, was far from idle. The events of the past days, the vandalized portrait, the planted key, the forged ledger wove a tapestry of deceit, and he was determined to unravel its threads. A faint creak from the corridor snapped his attention. His gray eyes, sharp as a falcon's, darted toward the door. The sound was not the settling of an old house, but the cautious tread of someone who wished not to be heard. Poirot rose, his movements as deliberate as a cat stalking prey, and slipped his notebook into the pocket of his silk dressing gown. He extinguished the bedside lamp, plunging the room into darkness save for the faint glow of moonlight filtering through the fog. With a soft step, he positioned himself beside the door, listening. Another creak, closer now, followed by the rustle of fabric. Someone was moving toward the library 2 doors down from his room. Poirot's lips curved into a slight smile. Mon Dieu, the night brings out the truth when the day conceals it, he murmured to himself. He eased the door open, peering into the shadowed hallway. A figure, cloaked in a dark coat, moved with purpose toward the library's double doors. The intruder's silhouette was unfamiliar on the broad shoulders of Mr. Caldwell, the American businessman, nor the slight frame of the governess, Clara Wren. This was someone new, an interloper in Blackthorn Manor's tangled web. Poirot followed, his polished shoes silent on the thick carpet. The library doors were ajar, and a faint light flickered within, likely from a candle or a pocket torch. He paused at the threshold, his senses attuned to every sound. The intruder was rummaging through papers, the soft shuffle of pages punctuated by muttered curses. Poirot's hand tightened on the doorframe. This was no random thief. The intruder sought something specific. With a swift, decisive motion, Poirot pushed the doors open and flicked on the overhead chandelier. The room blazed with light, revealing a young man frozen mid-motion, a stack of papers clutched in his gloved hands. He was lean, with sharp features and a mop of disheveled brown hair. His eyes, wide with panic, darted to Poirot, then to the open window behind him, as if calculating his escape. "Monsieur, I suggest you remain where you are," Poirot said, his voice calm but edged with steel. Hercule Poirot does not appreciate uninvited guests, especially those who disturb the order of a library. The man's shoulders slumped, but his grip on the papers tightened. "I didn't mean any harm," he stammered, his accent local, tinged with a soft burr of Devon. "I'm just looking for something." "Naturel, mon Poirot," replied, stepping closer, his mustache twitching with amusement. "And what, pray tell, does a midnight visitor seek in the private library of Lady Eleanor Blackthorn? A rare first edition, a recipe for Devonshire cream tea, or perhaps something less tenacent?" The man swallowed hard, his gaze flickering to the papers. "I'm a journalist, Tom Hartley, Exeter Chronicle. I got a tip about a story here, something big. I wasn't stealing, I swear, just investigating." Poirot's eyes narrowed. A journalist who creeps through windows at midnight is no mere seeker of truth. "You will explain yourself, Monsieur Hartley, or I shall summon the household, and your nocturnal adventure will end in the hands of the constabulary." Hartley hesitated, then set the papers on the desk, raising his hands in surrender. All right, I'll talk. You're that detective, aren't you, Poirot? Live. Heard of you? Maybe you'll understand." Poirot inclined his head, gesturing to a leather armchair. "Sit, monsieur." Hercule Poirot always listens before he judges. But be warned, I am not easily deceived. Hartley sank into the chair, his bravado fading. Poirot took the opposite seat, crossing one leg over the other with meticulous precision. The library, with its towering shelves and scent of aged leather, seemed to close in around them, a silent witness to the unfolding drama. "I got a letter 2 weeks ago," Hartley began, his voice low. "Anonymous, head. Blackthorn Manor was hiding a scandalous contested will tied to Lady Eleanor's stepson, Rupert Blackthorn. The letter claimed there's proof in this house, something that could ruin her. I've been digging into the Blackthorns for months. Old money, old secrets. When I heard Lady Eleanor was hosting guests, I figured it was my chance to slip in." Poirot's fingers steepled beneath his chin. "A contested will, you say? And this anonymous benefactor, did they provide details or merely dangle the bait before a hungry fish?" Hartley reached into his coat and produced a crumpled envelope. "Here, I brought it to show I'm not lying." Poirot took the envelope, his gloved fingers handling it as if it were a delicate artifact. The paper was cheap, the handwriting angular and hurried, written in black ink. It read, "The Blackthorn fortune is built on lies. The will is false. Find the truth in the manor's heart. A benefactor." "Interesting," Poirot murmured, studying the handwriting. The strokes were deliberate, almost theatrical, suggesting a writer accustomed to performance. He tucked the envelope into his pocket. "And what, Monsieur Hartley, did you hope to find tonight?" Hartley shifted uncomfortably. "I heard Lady Eleanor keeps a safe in here. Thought it might hold documents, maybe the real will. I wasn't going to steal it, just copy it." Poirot's gaze flicked to the far wall, where a portrait of Lady Eleanor's late husband, Sir Reginald Blackthorne, hung above a mahogany panel. He had noticed the panel's slight misalignment during his earlier exploration of the libraria. Telltale sign of a concealed compartment. "A safe, you say? And how did you know of its existence? Your anonymous friend, perhaps?" Hartley shook his head. "No, I've been watching the house. Servants talk. One mentioned a safe behind the old man's portrait. I figured it was worth a look." Poirot rose, his movements fluid, and approached the portrait. The key ran his fingers along the panel's edge, feeling for a latch. A soft click rewarded his efforts, and the panel swung open, revealing a small iron safe embedded in the wall. Hartley's eyes widened, but he remained seated, clearly wary of Poirot's authority. "Mon ami, you have stumbled into a game far larger than your newspaper column," Poirot said, examining the safe's lock. It was a combination model, old but sturdy, requiring 3 numbers. "It will remain here while Hercule Poirot considers your fate. But first, we shall see what secrets this safeguards." Hartley nodded, his face pale. Poirot turned his attention to the safe, his mind racing through possibilities. Lady Eleanor had mentioned a stolen heirloom, but her reticence suggested it was a pretext. The ledger he had uncovered in the study pointed to financial discrepancies, and now this talk of a contested will added another layer. The safe, he suspected, held a key piece of the puzzle. He recalled a conversation with Lady Eleanor earlier that day, when she had mentioned her husband's fondness for anniversaries. Sir Reginald was sentimental, she had said, her voice tinged with melancholy. He marked every milestone with numbers. Poirot's memory latched onto a detail from the ledger, a recurring date, the 9th of December, 83, the day of their marriage. It was a gamble, but Poirot's instincts rarely failed him. He spun the dial. 12, 2, 9, 83. A satisfying click echoed through the library, and the safe door swung open. Inside was a small velvet pouch, a bundle of letters tied with twine, and a folded parchment. Poirot extracted the parchment first, unfolding it with care. It was a map, hand-drawn in ink, depicting the manor's grounds with a red X marking. A spot in the grove beyond the greenhouse. "Soccer blue," Poirot whispered, his eyes gleaming. "A map to what, I wonder? A treasure? A secret? Or perhaps another lie in this tangle?" Hartley leaned forward, curiosity overcoming his fear. "What's that? A map?" Poirot held up a hand, silencing him. "You will learn only what Hercule Poirot deems necessary. For now, you are a guest in this house, albeit an uninvited one. You'll remain here until I decide otherwise." He turned to the letters, skimming their contents. They were love letters written by Sir Reginald to an unknown recipient, dated years before his marriage to Lady Eleanor. The tone was passionate, almost desperate, hinting at a forbidden affair. The pouch contained a single sapphire ring, its setting intricate but worn, as if it had been handled often. Poirot's mind whirred, connecting the ring to the missing heirloom Lady Eleanor had mentioned. But why hide it in a safe? And what did the map signify? Sudden noise from the hallway, soft thud, as if someone had tripped, broke his reverie. Poirot slipped the map and ring into his pocket, leaving the letters in the safe, and closed it with a quiet snap. He gestured for Hartley to stay silent, and moved to the door, peering out. The corridor was empty, but a faint scent of lavender lingered, a fragrance he associated with Miss Clara Wren, the governess. "Monsieur Hartley," Poirot said, turning back, "you have been useful, though not by design. I will not call the police yet. But you will leave this house at once, and you will speak of this to no one. If you do, Hercule Poirot will ensure your career ends before it begins. Comprenez-vous?" Hartley nodded, scrambling to his feet. "I understand. I'm gone." Poirot escorted him to the window, watching as the journalist disappeared into the fog. He then returned to the library, locking the doors behind him. The map burned a metaphorical hole in his pocket, its red X a beacon in the darkness of Blackthorn Manor's secrets. He knew the grove had marked a secluded spot he had noticed during his walks, overgrown with ivy and guarded by ancient oaks. Whatever lay there, it was no mere heirloom. As he prepared to retire for the night, Poirot's thoughts turned to the governess. The scent of lavender suggested she had been nearby, perhaps watching. Her role in this drama was unclear, but her quiet demeanor and sharp intellect made her a valuable allure, a dangerous foe. The letters, the ring, the map all pointed to a deeper truth, one tied to the Blackthorn family's past, and somewhere in that past lay the key to the manor's present turmoil. Poirot extinguished the chandelier, plunging the library into darkness once more. He stepped into the corridor, his mind already plotting his next move. Tomorrow he would visit the grove, accompanied by Miss Wren, whose knowledge of the estate might prove invaluable. For now, he allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The midnight visitor had been unmasked, and a new clue had emerged. The tangle of lies was beginning to unravel, and Hercule Poirot was, as always, one step ahead. The fog pressed closer, but Poirot's resolve was unshakable. "Long why," he whispered to himself, climbing the stairs to his room. "The truth awaits." The morning dawned gray, the fog lingering like a reluctant guest. Poirot rose early, his routine as precise as ever: a cup of tisane, a meticulous grooming of his mustache, and a review of his notes. The map, now safely tucked into his notebook, dominated his thoughts. Crude lines and cryptic X suggested a secret deliberately hidden, perhaps by Sir Reginald himself. But why? And how did it connect to the journalist's claims of a contested will? At breakfast, the manor's guests gathered in the dining room, their faces a study in concealed unease. Lady Eleanor, regal in a sapphire blue gown, presided over the table with practiced grace, though her eyes darted to Poirot more than once. Mr. Caldwell, the American, was boisterously recounting a business venture, his laughter too loud for the subdued mood. The playwright, Julian Marlowe, sat quietly, his charm subdued after Poirot's subtle probing the previous day. Miss Wren, the governess, sipped her tea, her expression unreadable. The artist, Miss Lydia Crane, was absent, claiming a headache. Convenient excuse, Poirot thought, given her nervous reaction to the vandalized portrait. "Monsieur Poirot," Lady Eleanor said, her voice cutting through Caldwell's monologue. "I trust you slept well, despite the fog." "Parfaitement," Madame Poirot replied, his tone light. "The fog, it is but a veil, and Hercule Poirot is adept at seeing through veils." Her smile tightened, and Poirot noted the slight tremor in her hand as she lifted her teacup. She knew something, he was certain, but fear or pride kept her silent. He turned his attention to Miss Wren, who sat across from him, her auburn hair neatly pinned, her gray eyes meeting his with quiet intensity. "Miss Wren," he said, "I understand you are familiar with the estate's grounds. Perhaps you might accompany me on a walk this morning. It's the air, it clears the mind. N'est-ce pas?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Of course, Monsieur Poirot. The Grove, perhaps. It's quite lovely, even in this weather. Poirot's mustache twitched. Her suggestion of the Grove was no coincidence. Either she had overheard his conversation with Hartley, or her own secrets drew her to that spot. The Grove? Oui. Excellent choice. After breakfast, Poirot and Miss Wren donned coats and ventured into the mist. The manor's grounds were a labyrinth of manicured lawns and wilder patches. The Grove a shadowed enclave at the estate's edge. As they walked, Poirot probed gently, his questions cloaked in casual conversation. "You have been with Lady Eleanor long, Miss Wren?" he asked, his tone deceptively light. 2 years, she replied, her voice steady. "Came to tutor her niece, but the child was sent to boarding school last spring. Lady Eleanor kept me on as a companion." "A generous employer," Poirot observed. "And yet the manor is not without its tensions. You have noticed, perhaps, the unease among the guests." She glanced at him, her eyes sharp. "I notice many things, Monsieur Poirot. People reveal more than they intend when they think no. One is watching." "Precisement," Poirot said, his smile genuine. "And what have you observed, if I may ask?" She paused, her gaze fixed on the path ahead. "Mr. Caldwell is not what he seems. His confidence is a mask. He's hiding something. Mr. Marlowe, the playwright, is too charming, too quick to deflect questions. And Miss Crane, she's frightened, but not of what's happened. It's what might come to light." Poirot nodded, impressed by her acumen. "And Lady Eleanor?" Miss Wren's lips pressed into a thin line. "She's protecting someone, or something. I don't know what, but it weighs on her." They reached the Grove, a cluster of ancient oaks draped in ivy, their branches forming a natural canopy. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of earth and moss. Poirot unfolded the map, comparing its lines to the landscape. The red X marked a spot near a gnarled tree, its roots twisting into the ground like ancient fingers. "Here," Poirot said, pointing. "We must look closely." Wren knelt beside him, her hands brushing aside leaves and soil. After a moment, she uncovered a flat stone, half buried in the earth. Poirot helped her lift it, revealing a small metal box, rusted but intact. Inside was a bundle of letters, their edges yellowed, and a single photograph of a young woman with a striking resemblance. "To Miss Wren, Monsieur," Poirot breathed, examining the photograph. "This is you, Miss Rayanne." She shook her head, her face pale. "No, but it could be my mother. She worked here years ago, before I was born." The letters were written in the same hand as those in the safe, Sir Reginald's passionate scrawl. They spoke of love, regret, and a promise to provide for a childhood child. Poirot realized who could only be Miss Wren. The implications were staggering. The governess was no mere employee, but a potential heir, hidden in plain sight. "Miss Wren," Poirot said gently, "these letters suggest a connection to the Blackthorn family. Do you know of this?" She shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. "I knew my mother worked here, but she never spoke of it. She died when I was young. I came to Blackthorn Manor because it was her only legacy to me, a story of a place where she was happy." Poirot placed a hand on her shoulder. "Courage, mademoiselle. Hercule Poirot will uncover the truth for you and for this house. But we must keep this secret for now. There are those who would use it against you." She nodded, composing herself. "What now, Monsieur Poirot?" "Now," he said, tucking the letters into his coat, "we return to the manor. The map has revealed its secret, but the game is far from over. There is a mastermind at work, and Hercule Poirot will not rest until they are unmasked." They walked back through the fog. Poirot's mind raced. The letters confirmed a hidden child, a contested will, and a motive for blackmail. The journalist's intrusion, the forged ledger, the vandalized portrait were threads in a larger web. and somewhere in that web was a monogrammed glove found near the grove, its owner still unknown. Poirot's gray cells hummed with anticipation. The tangle of lies was tightening, but he was ready to cut through. The day passed in a blur of subtle interrogations and careful observations. Poirot watched the guests closely, noting their interactions. Caldwell's bravado faltered when questioned about his business dealings. Marlowe's charm grew strained under Poirot's scrutiny. Miss Crane avoided the group, her absence conspicuous. Lady Eleanor, meanwhile, seemed distracted, her gaze lingering on the library doors as if expecting another intruder. That evening, as the guests retired, Poirot sat in his room, the map and letters spread before him. The glove, monogrammed with an R, nagged at his mind. It was too fine for a servant, too masculine for Lady Eleanor. The only R in the manor was Rupert Blackthorne, the absent stepson, whose name had surfaced in Hartley's story. Was he the mastermind, orchestrating chaos from afar? Or was the glove a plant, like the key in Miss Wren's room? A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Miss Wren stood at the door, her face pale but determined. "Monsieur Poirot, I found something. It's in the greenhouse, hidden in a pot. It's a vial with a strange label." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Excellent, mademoiselle. Show me." They hurried to the greenhouse, where Miss Wren revealed a small glass vial, its label marked with a chemical symbol Poirot recognized as a rare toxin. His heart quickened. The plot was thickening, and the stakes were rising. The midnight visitor had opened a door, and now Poirot stood on the threshold of a dangerous truth. This glove belonged to an outsider, or someone who had taken pains to appear so. Poirot slipped it into his pocket, alongside the map, and stepped into the hall. The manor was alive with the clatter of breakfast preparations, but Poirot's mind was elsewhere. The glove was a clue, a thread that did not yet fit. Was Rupert already here, lurking in the shadows? Or was the glove a plant meant to mislead? Poirot's little gray cells hummed with possibilities, each one a step toward the truth he found. Lady Eleanor in the drawing room, her face pale but composed. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, rising. "Have you made progress?" Poirot bowed. "Madame, the threads of this mystery, they begin to unravel. Lead us. They are secured, and the blackmailer's pen is stilled. But I must ask, stepson, Rupert, when did you last see him?" Lady Eleanor's eyes widened. "Rupert, not for months. He's been abroad, or so I thought." "Why?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "A precaution, madame. The truth, it is like a rose beautiful but with thorns. I shall protect you from them." As he left the drawing room, Poirot's mind turned to the glove. It was a small thing, yet it whispered of a larger design. The map had led to the letters to Warwick, and now the glove pointed to Rupertor, someone posing as him. The grove, the library, the manor itself, all were stages in a play of deception, and Poirot was determined to unmask the director. The day passed in a blur of discreet inquiries. Poirot spoke with the servants, noting their nervous glances when Rupert's name was mentioned. He observed the guests, their interactions laced with suspicion. The American businessman, Caldwell, was too jovial, his laughter forced. The artist, Miss Langley, avoided the gallery, her hands stained with paint. And the governess, Clara, watched them all, her sketchbook a silent record of the manor's secrets. By evening, Poirot retired to his room, the glove and map laid out on his desk. Kay lit a single candle, its flame casting shadows that danced like the motives he chased. The blackmail was resolved, but the glove suggested a deeper game. Hobby's absence was too convenient, his shadow too present. Poirot's fingers tapped a rhythm on the desk, a habit when his mind was at work. The truth lies in the shadows, he murmured, echoing the letters. But whose truth and whose shadows? He extinguished the candle, the room plunging into darkness. Tomorrow he would follow the glove's thread wherever it led. For now, the map of motives was clear. Blackthorn Manor was a chessboard, and Poirot was the master player, one move from checkmate. Chapter 6. The Map of Motives. The morning sun pierced the fog that had clung to Blackthorn Manor like a shroud, casting golden slants through the tall windows of the library. Hercule Poirot stood alone, his gloved fingers tracing the edges of the cryptic map he had extracted from the hidden safe the previous night. The paper was brittle, its ink faded but deliberate, marking a path to a secluded grove on the estate's sprawling grounds. The map was no mere sketch. It was a cipher, a whisper of secrets buried in the earth. Poirot's gray eyes, sharp as a falcon's, studied the lines, his mind already weaving threads of motive and deception. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, adjusting his mustache with a practiced flick. "This map, it is not for treasure of gold, but for treasure of truth. In truth, she is a dangerous prize." The library was silent, save for the faint tick of a grandfather clock in the corner. Its pendulum swung with the weight of time, a reminder that each moment at Blackthorn Manor deepened the tangle of lies. Poirot folded the map and slipped it into his waistcoat pocket, his polished shoes clicking against the oak floor as he made his way to the door. He had resolved the intrusion of the journalist the night before, but the discovery of the map had shifted the game. It was no longer a matter of stolen heirlooms or petty grudges. Something darker stirred beneath the manor's polished veneer. Outside, the air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and late-blooming roses. Poirot found Miss Clara Henshaw, the governess, in the rose garden, her slender figure bent over a sketchbook. Her auburn hair caught the sunlight, and her hands moved with precision, capturing the delicate curve of a petal. She was an enigma, this governess, reserved yet observant, her quiet demeanor a shield for something unspoken. Poirot had cleared her of suspicion in the matter of the planted key, earning her trust. And now he sought her as an ally. "Mademoiselle Henshaw," Poirot called softly, approaching with a courteous bow. "A fine morning for sketching, n'est-ce pas?" Clara looked up, her green eyes startled but warm. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, closing her sketchbook, "I find the roses calming. They don't lie or scheme, unlike some in this house." The Poirot's lips twitched in a faint smile. "The roses, they speak only of beauty. But you, mademoiselle, you see much, do you not? The tensions, the whispers, the secrets of Blackthorn Manor." Clara hesitated, her fingers tightening on the sketchbook. "I see enough," she admitted, "but I keep to myself. It's safer that way." "Safe, perhaps, but not always wise," Poirot said, his tone gentle but probing. "I have found something, mademoiselle, something that requires a companion with sharp eyes. Will you walk with me?" Clara's gaze flickered with curiosity, and after a moment, she nodded. "If it helps unravel this mess, I'll come." Together, they followed the map's winding path, leaving the manicured gardens behind for the wilder edges of the estate. The grove it marked was tucked beyond a copse of ancient oaks, their gnarled branches forming a canopy that dimmed the sunlight. The air grew cooler, heavier, as if the grove held its breath. Poirot's pace was measured, his eyes scanning the ground for signs of disturbance. Clara matched his stride, her sketchbook clutched to her chest like a talisman. "There, Poirot," said, pointing to a patch of earth beneath a twisted yew tree. The soil was uneven, recently turned, and a faint glint of metal caught his eye. He knelt, his movements precise, and unearthed a small tin box, its surface rusted but intact. Clara gasped softly as he pried it open, revealing a bundle of letters, tied with a faded ribbon. "Letters," she whispered. "Whose are they?" Poirot's gloved fingers untied the ribbon, and he scanned the first letter. The handwriting was elegant, the words sharp with menace. "Pay, or the truth of your husband's dealings will be known to all," it read. The signature was a single initial. Poirot's mind raced, cataloging the guests. Could be Rupert, Lady Eleanor's stepson, but he had not yet arrived. Another R, or a pseudonym. "Blackmail," Poirot said, his voice low. "These letters, they are the threads of a web, mademoiselle. And the spider, I think, is among us." Clara's face paled. "Who would do this? Lady Eleanor is kind. Generous kindness does not shield one from greed," Poirot interrupted gently. "Come, we return to the manor. These letters, they must be examined in detail." Back in the library, Poirot spread the letters on a mahogany table, their contents a litany of threats and demands. Each was addressed to Lady Eleanor, referencing her late husband's indiscretions and demanding substantial sums. The dates spanned months, the tone growing more insistent. Poirot's eyes narrowed as he recognized a phrase repeated in several letters. "The truth lies in the shadows." It was poetic, deliberate, the work of someone with a flair for words. "The playwright," Poirot murmured, "Mr. Julian Warwick. His pen, it dances with such flourish, does it not?" Clara frowned. "Julian, he's charming, but it's cruel. Charm, mademoiselle, is often the mask of cruelty," Poirot said. "We shall see." He sent for Warwick, who arrived with his usual air of nonchalance, his dark hair tousled and his smile disarming. The playwright was in his 30s, lean and theatrical, with a voice that could charm a serpent. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, bowing slightly. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" Poirot gestured to the letters. "These, Monsieur Warwick, they bear the mark of your craft words, chosen with care, a rhythm almost poetic. Do you deny writing them?" Warwick's smile faltered, his eyes darting to the letters. I write plays, not threats," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Poirot stepped closer, his gaze unyielding. "Monsieur, the little gray cells, they do not lie. The phrase, 'The truth lies in the shadows,' it appears in your latest script, does it not?" Curious coincidence. Warwick's shoulders slumped, and he ran a hand through his hair. "All right," he said, his voice low. "I wrote them, but not for myself. I was protecting someone." "Protecting?" Poirot's eyebrow arched. "Or profiting?" "Explain, monsieur." Warwick sank into a chair, his charm replaced by weariness. "It was Eleanor's stepson, Rupert. He came to me months ago, desperate. He said he'd uncover proof of his father's dealings, debts, fraud, things that would ruin the Blackthorn name. He asked me to write the letters to scare Eleanor into paying, to keep it quiet. I didn't want to, but he had something on me, something." Poirot pressed. Warwick hesitated, then sighed. "Scandal from my past. A play I plagiarized early in my career. Rupert threatened to expose me. I had no choice." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And the money, monsieur? Where did it go?" "I don't know," Warwick insisted. "Okay, Rupert handled that. I just wrote the letters." Clara, who had been silent, spoke up. "You let Lady Eleanor live in fear, Julian. How could you?" Warwick's face twisted with guilt. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought it would be one letter, maybe two. But Rupert kept pushing." Poirot nodded, his mind cataloging the confession. "Monsieur Warwick, you have woven a dangerous thread. These letters, I shall keep them safe. But you will speak no more of this until I say understood." Warwick nodded, his bravado gone. Poirot dismissed him, then turned to Clara. "Mademoiselle, you have been most helpful. These letters, they resolve the blackmail, but they raise a new question. Who is this Rupert, and what drives him?" Clara left to resume her sketching. Poirot returned to the letters, his fingers brushing against the ribbon. The library was quiet again, but the air felt charged, as if the walls themselves held secrets. He was about to lock the letters away when a glint caught his eye, a monogrammed glove, half hidden beneath a cushion. Its stitching bore the initial R. Soccer Blue, Poirot whispered. The web, it grows ever more tangled, Abby examined. The glove, its leather fine but worn, the monogram embroidered with care. It was not among the guest's belongings. He had catalogued their possessions in his meticulous way. Chapter 7. The stranger's arrival. The morning mist clung to Blackthorn Manor like a veil, softening the sharp edges of its Gothic spires and muffling the world beyond. Hercule Poirot stood at the edge of the gravel drive, his polished shoes sinking slightly into the damp earth, his eyes narrowed against the haze. The air carried the faint tang of wet moss and wood smoke, a reminder of the estate's isolation in the Devon countryside. He adjusted his scarf, his gloved hands precise, and inhaled deeply, savoring the clarity the morning offered his mind. The events of the past days, the vandalized portrait, the planted key, the blackmail letters had woven a tapestry of deceit. Then Poirot sensed the threads tightening inside the manor. The atmosphere was anything but serene. The guests, a motley assembly of Lady Eleanor Blackthorn's acquaintances, moved through the oak-panelled halls with the wariness of actors in a play they hadn't rehearsed. The charming playwright, Cedric Marlowe, flashed his easy smile, but his eyes darted too often to the governess, Miss Clara Henshaw, whose quiet reserve masked a storm of secrets. The American businessman, Mr. Theodore Caldwell, strode about with the confidence of a man who believed money could buy silence, while the reclusive artist, Miss Beatrice Langley, hovered at the edges, her fingers stained with the rare cerulean paint that had to face Lady Eleanor's gallery. And Lady Eleanor herself, the widowed mistress of Blackthorn, Cotta, presided over it all with a brittle grace, her cryptic remarks about a stolen heirloom hinting at deeper wounds. Poirot's thoughts were interrupted by the crunch of tires on gravel. A motor car, its black frame gleaming despite the mist, roared up the drive with an urgency that set the rooks in the nearby elms scattering. The vehicle skidded to a halt, and a young man leaped out, his broad shoulders straining against a tailored overcoat. His face, handsome but hardened, bore the unmistakable stamp of defiance. He tossed a cigarette to the ground, grinding it under his heel, and strode toward the manor's entrance without a glance at Poirot. "Mondre," Poirot murmured, his mustache twitching. "The prodigal arrives, and with him, the storm." He followed at a measured pace, noting the man's heavy tread, the way his hands clenched as if expecting a fight. The monogrammed glove, discovered in the grove and bearing the initials R.B., flashed in Poirot's mind. Rupert Blackthorn, Lady Eleanor's stepson, had not been expected at this gathering. His sudden arrival was no coincidence. The grand hall of Blackthorn Manor buzzed with the forced politeness of breakfast. Cedric Marlowe entertained Miss Henshaw with a witty anecdote about a London theatre mishap. Though his laughter rang hollow, Mr. Caldwell, seated at the head of the table, sliced into a grapefruit with surgical precision, his eyes flicking toward Lady Eleanor, who sipped her tea with an air of detachment. Miss Langley, as usual, was absent, likely holed up in her makeshift studio in the attic. The clatter of silverware paused as the double doors swung open and Rupert Blackthorn stormed in. "Eleanor," he said, his voice a low growl, dispensing with formalities, "you didn't think to invite me to your little charade?" Lady Eleanor's teacup froze halfway to her lips. Her pale eyes widened, then narrowed. "Rupert," she said, her tone cool as frost, "this is ... unexpected. To what do we owe this pleasure?" The guests exchanged glances, the air thick with unspoken questions. Poirot, seated near the window, observed the scene with the keenness of a hawk. Rupert's presence was a catalyst, stirring the sediment of secrets at the manor's core. "Don't play coy, Eleanor," Rupert snapped, tossing his overcoat onto a chair. I heard about your troubling matter. Missing heirlooms, vandals in the night. Sounds like you're in over your head. Or is this another of your schemes to keep me from what's mine? The accusation hung like a thundercloud. Cedric leaned back, his smile fading, while Miss Henshaw's fingers tightened around her napkin. Caldwell's knife paused mid-cut, his gaze sharp. Poirot noted the reactions, cataloging them: fear, curiosity, calculation. Monsieur Blackthorne. Poirot interjected, his voice smooth as velvet. Perhaps you might enlighten us. You speak of what is yours. Quest ceq cest, an heirloom, a legacy, or something less, tangible. Rupert's eyes, a stormy gray, locked onto Poirot. Who's this? He demanded, jerking a thumb toward the detective. Another of your hired lackeys, Eleanor? Hercule Poirot, Poirot said, rising with a slight bow. A guest, invited to untangle the little mysteries of Blackthorn Manor. And you, monsieur, are a most intriguing addition to our puzzle. Rupert snorted, but his posture softened, as if Poirot's calm authority disarmed him. Fine, I'm here because I got a letter anonymous, naturally saying the estate's being bled dry. My father's estate, mind you, not hers. He shot a glance at Lady Eleanor, who remained impassive. I want answers. Answers, Poirot echoed, his green eyes glinting. A noble pursuit. But first, monsieur, a question. Where were you 2 nights ago when the portrait in the gallery was defaced? The room stilled. Rupert's jaw tightened, but he answered without hesitation. London. I was at my club, the Red Lion, until midnight. Plenty of witnesses. Convened alibi, Poirot mused, and one we shall verify. But come, let us not spoil breakfast with suspicions, madame. He turned to Lady Eleanor. Perhaps Monsieur Blackthorne might join us. Lady Eleanor's smile was tight. Of course, Rupert, do sit. We have much to discuss. As breakfast resumed, Poirot slipped away to the library, his mind churning. The monogrammed glove, found among the blackmail letters in the grove, bore Rupert's initials. Yet his arrival, brash and unannounced, suggested either supreme confidence or calculated bravado. Poirot suspected the latter. The anonymous letter Rupert mentioned was a new piece of the puzzle, one that echoed the journalist's intrusion 2 nights prior. Was Rupert in league with the press, or was he, too, a pawn in a larger game? The library, with its towering shelves and musty tomes, was a sanctuary for Poirot's thoughts. He paced before the fireplace, where embers glowed faintly, and considered the glove, with fine leather, monogrammed in gold thread, but its mate was missing, and it had been found deliberately placed among the letters. A plant, perhaps, to incriminate Rupert, a careless mistake by the man himself. A soft knock interrupted his reverie. Miss Henshaw entered, her face pale but composed. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice low. I must speak with you. It's about Rupert. Poirot gestured to a chair. Mademoiselle, your timing is impeccable. What do you know of Monsieur Blackthorne? She hesitated, twisting a handkerchief in her hands. He's difficult. Lady Eleanor's stepson, but they've never been close. His father, Sir Henry, left the bulk of the estate to her, and Rupert's been bitter ever since. I overheard him once, years ago, vowing to take back what he called his birthright interessent, Poirot said, steepling his fingers. And this morning, his arrival, did it surprise you? She admitted. No, he wasn't invited, but there's something else. I saw him yesterday, in the village, speaking to that journalist, Mr. Harrow. They seemed conspiratorial. Poirot's mustache twitched. The journalist, a man with a nose for scandal. Tell me, mademoiselle, did you see anything pass between them? A letter, perhaps, or an object? She frowned, thinking. I couldn't be sure. It was dusk, and I was at a distance. But Rupert handed him something small, wrapped in cloth. Huh? Could have been a book or a diary. The word struck Poirot like a bell. The blackmail letters had mentioned a document, something Lady Eleanor feared being exposed. Could it be Sir Henry's diary, rumored to hold secrets about the estate's finances? And if Rupert was involved with the journalist, was he the orchestrator of the manor's chaos, or merely a tool? Mercy, Mademoiselle Poirot said, his tone warm but firm. Cool, you have been most helpful. But one request, say nothing of this to the others. It's the truth. It is like a delicate souffle. It must rise undisturbed. She nodded, her eyes wide, and left the library. Poirot turned to the window, where the mist was beginning to lift, revealing the rolling hills beyond. The diary, if it existed, was the key. And Rupert Blackthorne, with his stormy eyes and reckless energy, was either its keeper or its thief. By midday, the manor buzzed with tension. Rupert's presence had fractured the fragile civility among the guests. Cedric Marlowe, usually the soul of charm, snapped at a maid who spilled his coffee, while Mr. Caldwell retreated to the billiard room, muttering about family squabbles. Miss Langley emerged from the attic, her eyes redrimmed, as if she'd been crying gore painting something she didn't want seen. Lady Eleanor, meanwhile, withdrew to a private parlor, claiming a headache. Though Poirot suspected she was avoiding her stepson, he found Rupert in the conservatory, a glass house filled with exotic ferns and the heady scent of orchids. The young man stood by a fountain, tossing pebbles into the water, his movements restless. Poirot approached, his cane tapping softly on the tiled floor. "Monsieur Blackthorne," he said, "a moment, if you please." This glove he produced, the monogrammed leather from his pocket, holding it aloft like a trophy. "It bears your initials. Yet it was found in a place most curious, among letters of a ... compromising nature." "Can you explain?" Rupert's eyes narrowed, but he didn't flinch. "Lost it weeks ago," he said, shrugging. "Someone must have picked it up, trying to pin something on me, eh?" "Wouldn't be the first time Eleanor's played dirty." "Dirty," Poirot echoed, his tone deceptively mild. "You speak of your stepmother with such venom, yet she has welcomed you here, Nan. Perhaps you misjudge her intentions." Rupert laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the glass walls. "Welcomed? She's got no choice. This is my home, Poirot, whether she likes it or not, and I'll be damned if I let her sell it off or fritter it away on her precious guests." Sell? Poirot's eyebrows rose. "You believe Lady Eleanor plans to sell Blackthorne Manor?" "Heard it from a reliable source," Rupert said, his voice low. "That journalist, Harrow, he's been sniffing around, says she's in debt up to her eyeballs, needs cash fast, so she's planning to offload the estate, my father's estate." Poirot's mind raced. The ledger he'd found in the study showed discrepancies, but nothing suggested imminent sale. Was Rupert's information accurate, or was it a fabrication by the journalist to stir discord? And the diary, could it confirm or refute these claims? "Monsieur," Poirot said, "your passion for your father's legacy is admirable, but let us test this alibi of yours. The Red Lion, you say? I shall make inquiries. And the diary, do you know of it? A record, perhaps, of Sir Henry's wishes." Rupert's face darkened. "Diary? No idea what you're on about, but if there's something proving this place is mine, I'll find it. And no one, not Eleanor, not you, will stop me." He turned and strode out, leaving Poirot alone with the ferns and the faint splash of the fountain. The detective's eyes gleamed. Rupert's denial was too quick, too practiced. The diary existed, and Poirot would find it that afternoon. Poirot enlisted Miss Henshaw's help to search the manor's east wing, where Sir Henry's old rooms lay untouched since his death. The governess, now an ally, moved with quiet efficiency, her knowledge of the manor's nooks proving invaluable. They navigated dusty corridors lined with faded tapestries, the air heavy with the scent of old wood and forgotten time. In Sir Henry's study, a mahogany-paneled room cluttered with hunting trophies and leather-bound books. Poirot's sharp eyes caught a discrepancy, a bookshelf that didn't sit flush against the wall. With Miss Henshaw's assistance, he shifted it, revealing a small compartment. Inside was a leather diary, its cover embossed with Sir Henry's initials. "Voila," Poirot said, his voice triumphant. "The diary, it speaks at last." He opened it, scanning the pages. The entries were meticulous, detailing estate matters. But one passage stood out, a reference to a private arrangement with a trusted friend, to secure a legacy for one who bears my name. The words were vague, but Poirot's mind connected them to the governess's confession in the next chapter that she was Sir Henry's illegitimate child. Yet the diary also mentioned a trust fund, one that matched the missing funds in the ledger. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said, closing the diary, "this is a treasure most dangerous. It holds secrets that some would kill to protect or to destroy. We must guard it well." Miss Henshaw nodded, her face pale but resolute. "All right. Now, Monsieur Poirot." "Now," he said, tucking the diary into his coat, "we verify Monsieur Rupert's alibi, and we watch him closely, for he is either the hunter or the hunted." The evening brought a confrontation that shook the manor's foundations. Poirot, armed with the diary and Miss Henshaw's observations, gathered the guests in the drawing room. Rupert stood by the fireplace, his arms crossed, his gaze defiant. Lady Eleanor sat rigidly, her hands folded in her lap, while the others, Cedric, Caldwell, and a newly returned Miss Langley, watched with bated breath. "Mesdames, et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice commanding the room. "The arrival of Monsieur Blackthorne has brought clarity to our little drama. 2 nights ago, a portrait was defaced, a crime of passion. N'est ce pas? Monsieur Blackthorne claims he was in London, at the Red Lion, yet a glove, bearing his initials, was found among letters of blackmail. A coincidence? Perhaps." Rupert's face reddened. "I told you, I lost that glove. Someone's framing me, and I'd wager it's her." He pointed at Lady Eleanor, who didn't flinch. "Calmez-vous," Poirot said, raising a hand. "I have made inquiries. The Red Lion confirms Monsieur Blackthorne's presence until midnight, as he claims. Vandalism occurred at 1 in the morning. The distance from London to Devon makes his involvement unlikely unless he has wings. Nan?" A ripple of nervous laughter broke the tension. Rupert smirked, but his eyes remained wary. "Yet," Poirot continued, "the glove suggests a connection. In this diary," he produced it, holding it aloft, "reveals a legacy, a trust fund, that some might wish to claim. Monsieur Blackthorne, you spoke of your father's estate. Did you know of this diary?" Rupert's smirk faded. "I told you, I don't know anything about a diary. But if it proves the estate's mine, I want it." "Patience," Poirot said. "The diary is safe, and its secrets will be revealed in time. For now, the glove is a puzzle solved, was placed to mislead, to cast suspicion. But by whom? That mise Amos is the question." The room fell silent, each guest lost in their thoughts. Poirot's gaze swept over them, noting Cedric's clenched jaw, Caldwell's calculating stare, Miss Langley's trembling hands. Lady Eleanor met his eyes, her expression unreadable as the guests dispersed. Poirot lingered, the diary heavy in his pocket. Rupert's alibi held, but his alliance with the journalist and his obsession with the estate suggested deeper motives. The diary was the key, but its full meaning remained elusive. And, somewhere in Blackthorne Manor, a mastermind was watching, their next move already in motion. Poirot's pulse quickened. This was no coincidence. The fund had been moved, but by whom? Gray was likely dead, given the date, but his firm might still exist. Poirot made a mental note to contact his friend, Inspector Japp, for assistance in tracing the records. For now, he pocketed the statement, ensuring no one else would find it, as he left the study. The manor's bell rang for luncheon, summoning the guests to the dining room. Poirot joined them, his eyes scanning the faces around the table. Rupert, slouched in his chair, was arguing with Caldwell over a business venture. The playwright, Oliver Grayson, was charming the artist, Miss Lydia Vale, with the tales of London's theatre scene. Lady Eleanor presided with strained grace, while Clara sat quietly, her eyes avoiding Poirot's. The meal was interrupted by a commotion at the door. The butler, Mr. Harrow, entered, his face ashen. Monsieur Poirot, there's been an incident in the greenhouse. The plant Miss Vale's prized orchid's been destroyed. A murmur rippled through the room. Lydia Vale gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Destroyed? But how? Poirot rose, his napkin neatly folded. Mies, Amos, remained calm. I shall investigate, Miss Vale. Perhaps you will accompany me. The greenhouse was a glass cathedral, its air humid and fragrant with earth. The ruined orchid lay in a heap of shattered petals, its pot smashed. Poirot knelt, examining the soil. A faint chemical scent lingered, not unlike the paint used in the gallery vandalism. He turned to Lydia, whose distress seemed genuine. Miss Vale, he said, this orchid, it was dear to you. Oui? She nodded, tears brimming. It was a gift from my mentor, a rare species. I've tended it for years. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Okay, in this chemical, it is familiar, is it not? The same as your artist's paint, perhaps. Lydia froze, her breath catching. I don't know what you mean. But Poirot's mind was racing. The vandalism, the orchid, the trust fund all were connected, not by chance, but by design. Someone was sowing chaos to distract from the true crime. He excused Lydia, promising to investigate further, and returned to the manor, his thoughts a whirl of possibilities. That evening, Poirot sat by the fire in his guest room, the bank statement and diary before him. The trust fund's theft was the heart of the mystery, but another question nagged. Why now? Why had the manor's secrets erupted after years of silence? He recalled the diary's final entry, a cryptic line. The confidant has betrayed me, and the truth will destroy us all. Poirot closed his eyes, letting the little gray cells work. The confidant could be anyone Rupert, seeking his inheritance, Caldwell with his financial schemes, or even Lady Eleanor guarding her husband's legacy. But the chemical scent, the artist's paint, pointed to Lydia Vale. Had she been coerced, or was she a willing player in this tangle of lies? A knock at the door startled him. It was Clara, her face pale. Monsieur Poirot, I found something in my room. A note slipped under the door. She handed him a scrap of paper, its message scrawled in haste. Leave the manor, or the truth will bury you. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the thread was clear. Someone knew Clara's secret hand, feared her presence. Poirot's mustache twitched. Mademoiselle, fear not. This note, it is a sign we are close to the truth. Tomorrow we shall confront this shadow. As Clara left, Poirot gazed into the fire, the flames dancing like the motives of Blackthorn Manor's guests. The diary's confession had unlocked one door, but the trust fund's theft opened another. With each step, Poirot drew closer to the heart of the tangle, where lies and truth would finally meet. Chapter 8. The diary's confession. The air in Blackthorn Manor was thick with secrets, each one a thread in the intricate tapestry Hercule Poirot now sought to unravel. The morning light filtered through the heavy drapes of the library, casting long shadows across the oak-paneled walls. Poirot stood by a tall bookshelf, his gloved fingers tracing the spine of a leather-bound volume, his mind alight with the discoveries of the past days. The arrival of Rupert, Lady Eleanor's brash stepson, had stirred the manor's uneasy calm, like a stone cast into a still pond. The monogrammed glove, linked to Rupert, had been a tantalizing clue, but it was the discovery of the late Lord Blackthorn's diary found tucked behind a false panel in the study that promised to illuminate the shadows. Poirot turned the diary over in his hands, its worn cover soft beneath his touch. The pages, yellowed and brittle, whispered of a past that refused to stay buried. He had spent the early hours poring over its contents. The meticulous script of Lord Blackthorn revealing a man both calculating and tormented. The diary's final entries, written in a hurried hand, spoke of an illegitimate child, a revelation that sent ripples through Poirot's orderly thoughts. Could the governess, Miss Clara Henshaw, with her guarded eyes and quiet demeanor, be the key to this confession? Her presence at the manor had seemed unremarkable, yet Poirot's intuition, that infallible compass, sensed she was more than she appeared. He closed the diary and adjusted his perfectly knotted tie, the faint scent of his lavender cologne mingling with the musty air. The library door creaked open, and Miss Henshaw entered, her footsteps soft on the Persian rug. She wore a simple gray dress, her auburn hair pinned tightly, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease as they met Poirot's. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady but laced with caution. "You wish to see me?" "Oui, mademoiselle," Poirot replied, his tone warm yet precise, like a violinist tuning a string. "Please, sit. There's a matter of some delicacy we must discuss." He gestured to a velvet-upholstered chair, and she complied, her hands folding tightly in her lap. Poirot placed the diary on the table between them, its presence a silent accusation. "This," he said, tapping the cover, "is the journal of the late Lord Blackthorn. It contains revelations most unexpected. I believe you may shed light on one in particular." Case darted to the diary, then back to Poirot, her lips parting slightly. "I don't understand," she said. But the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Poirot leaned forward, his mustache twitching as he studied her. "Mademoiselle Henshaw, the little gray cells, they do not rest. They have observed you, your quiet manner, your reluctance to speak of your past. And now this diary speaks of a child born out of wedlock to a woman whose name is not revealed. I suspect, mademoiselle, that you are that child." The room seemed to hold its breath. Clara's face paled, her fingers tightening until her knuckles whitened. For a moment she was silent, her eyes fixed on the diary as if it were a serpent, poised to strike. Then, with a shuddering breath, she spoke. "You are correct, Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am the daughter of Lord Blackthorn. But I swear to you, I came here not for wealth or revengingly for answers." Poirot's eyes softened, though his mind remained sharp. "Tell me, mademoiselle, your story. The truth, if you please, for it is only in truth that we untangle this web." Clara's tale unfolded like a delicate flower opening to the sun. She spoke of her mother, a seamstress who had loved Lord Blackthorn in her youth, only to be cast aside when his marriage to Lady Eleanor was arranged. The affair had been brief, a fleeting passion in a Devon summer, but it left Clara's mother with a child and a broken heart. Raised in modest circumstances, Clara had known nothing of her father until her mother's deathbed confession revealed his identity. A bundle of letters, hidden in a tin box, confirmed the truth, and Clara, driven by a need to understand her origins, had sought employment at Blackthorn Manor under a false name. "I wanted to know him," she said, her voice breaking. "Not his fortune, not his title, just the man. Was he cruel, as my mother believed, or was there something more?" When I learned of the governess position, I saw my chance. Quote, Monsieur Poirot, I meant no harm. Poirot listened intently, his head tilted, his fingers steepled before him. The sincerity in her voice was unmistakable, but he knew sincerity could cloak deeper motives. "And these letters," he said, "you have them still?" Clara nodded, rising to fetch a small satchel from her room. She returned moments later, placing a bundle of envelopes on the table. The paper was fragile, the ink faded, but the words were clear, tender promises from a young Lord Blackthorne to a woman named Margaret Henshaw. Poirot examined them, his eyes scanning the looping script, confirming their authenticity. The letters spoke of love, but also of regret, of a man torn between duty and desire. "These are genuine," Poirot said, setting the letters down. "They corroborate your story, mademoiselle. But tell me, why did you not reveal yourself to Lady Eleanor?" Clara's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I feared her reaction. She loved my father, and I am a reminder of his betrayal. I thought, perhaps, if I could understand the manner, the family, I might find a way to approach her. But then, all this began. The vandalism, the thefts, the suspicions. I couldn't risk exposure. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. Clara's confession resolved one thread, the identity of the illegitimate child, but the diary had hinted at another, a trust fund established in secret, now missing. He turned to a marked page in the diary, where Lord Blackthorne had written of a sum set aside for the child of my heart. The entry was cryptic, mentioning a bank in Exeter and a code known only to his solicitor. Yet the fund, Poirot suspected, was the true source of the manor's unrest, a prize coveted by those who knew of its existence. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said, his voice gentle but firm, "this trust fund, it is no longer in the bank. I have made inquiries, discreet, of course, and the account was emptied years ago, shortly after your father's death. Do you know of anyone who might have had access?" Clara shook her head, her brow furrowing. "No, I knew nothing of a trust fund until you mentioned it. My mother never spoke of money, only of her love for him. Someone took it, it wasn't me." Poirot believed her, but the question remained, who had stolen the fund? The diary offered no names, only hints of a trusted confidant who had betrayed. Lord Blackthorne, the cast of suspects, Rupert, the American businessman Caldwell, the playwright, the artist. Even Lady Eleanor herself swirled in Poirot's mind, each with motives tangled like vines. The library door opened again, and Lady Eleanor swept in, her silk gown rustling. Her face, usually composed, was taut with worry. "It's Monsieur Poirot," she said. "I heard voices. Is something amiss?" Poirot rose, bowing slightly. "Madame, all is under control. Mademoiselle Henshaw and I have merely been discussing family history." Lady Eleanor's eyes narrowed, flickering to Clara. "Family history? What do you mean?" Poirot hesitated, weighing the moment. To reveal Clara's identity now risked shattering the fragile trust he had built. Yet secrecy could hinder his investigation. He chose a middle path. "Madame, the diary of your late husband has revealed certain complexities. I am verifying these matters to ensure the harmony of your household." Lady Eleanor's lips tightened, but she nodded. "Very well, but I expect answers soon, Monsieur Poirot. This manor cannot endure more discord." As she left, Poirot turned to Clara. "Mademoiselle, you must trust me to handle this delicately. For now, say nothing of your identity." The little gray cells, they work best in silence. Clara nodded, her relief palpable. Poirot escorted her out, his mind already shifting to the trust fund. Teeny evidence documents, bank records, anything to trace the money's path. To study where the diary had been found was his next destination. The study was a haven of polished wood and leather, its air heavy with the scent of old books. Poirot began a meticulous search, his gloved hands probing every drawer and shelf. Behind a portrait of Lord Blackthorne, he found a hidden compartment, its lock long broken. Inside was a single document, a bank statement from 1908, showing a transfer of £10,000 to an account in London, signed by a solicitor named Percival Gray. The name was unfamiliar, but the amount matched the diary's description of the trust fund. Chapter 9. The Garden of Lies. The morning mist clung to Blackthorne Manor like a conspirator, shrouding the estate in a veil of secrecy. Hercule Poirot, his mustache impeccably groomed despite the early hour, stood at the edge of the manor's greenhouse, his gray eyes scanning the glass panes that glinted faintly in the dawn. The greenhouse, a relic of Victorian ambition, was a labyrinth of exotic flora, its air heavy with the scent of damp earth and blooming orchids. To Poirot, it was not merely a place of cultivation, but a stage where secrets took root, their tendrils curling through the lives of the manor's inhabitants, the revelations of the past. Days weighed on him, the diary's confession of an illegitimate child, the governess's poignant truth, and the missing trust fund that seemed to pulse at the heart of Blackthorne's unrest. Now, a new thread had emerged, a rare plant, its sap a perfect match for the artist's peculiar paint used to deface the gallery portrait. The artist, Marcel Dubois, had been evasive, his nervous glances betraying a guilt Poirot was determined to unravel. But it was the greenhouse itself, whispered about by the staff as Lady Eleanor's private sanctuary, that beckoned Poirot now. Somewhere among its verdant chaos lay the next piece of the puzzle. Poirot pushed open the creaking glass door, stepping into a humid world where ferns arched like silent sentinels and vines draped like conspiratorial whispers. The governess, Miss Clara Henshaw, trailed behind him, her steps cautious but resolute. Since her confession as the illegitimate daughter of Lady Eleanor's late husband, she had become an unlikely ally, her sharp mind proving as valuable as her quiet courage. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice low, "this place feels alive, as if it's watching us." "Indeed," Mademoiselle Poirot replied, his tone measured but tinged with intrigue. "A garden such as this is a mirror of its keeper's soul, and, I suspect, Lady Eleanor's soul harbors many shadows." He adjusted his gloves, his movements precise, and began to examine the rows of plants, his fingers brushing against leaves as if reading their secrets in braille. Their search was interrupted by a rustle from the far end of the greenhouse. Poirot's head snapped up, his senses alert. "Stay here, mademoiselle," he murmured, moving toward the sound with the stealth of a cat. Behind a cluster of towering palms, he found Marcel Dubois, his hands stained with soil, frantically repotting a small, spiky plant with vibrant purple leaves. The artist froze, his eyes wide with panic, as Poirot emerged from the foliage. "Monsieur Dubois," Poirot said, his voice smooth but edged with steel. "You seem to have a particular fondness for this greenhouse, or is it perhaps the secrets it holds that draw you here?" Dubois stammered, his hands trembling as he set down the plant. I was merely tending to my supplies, Monsieur Poirot. The sap of the Dracaena purpura is essential for my paints. Rare, you see, and rare." "Indeed," Poirot interrupted, his gaze fixed on the plant. "Rare enough to match the paint used to vandalize Lady Eleanor's portrait, and rare enough, I suspect, to be a tool in a larger deception." He stepped closer, his presence commanding despite his diminutive stature. "Tell me, monsieur, what else does this greenhouse conceal? For I believe it is not only paint you have crafted here." Dubois's shoulders slumped, defeat etched into his features. "You're too clever, Monsieur Poirot," he muttered. "I did forge documents, letters, receipts for the trust fund. But I swear I was forced. Someone threatened to expose my past, my indiscretions in Paris. I had no choice. Poirot's eyes narrowed, his mind racing. No choice, you say? Yet you chose to wield your talents for deceit. Who is this someone, monsieur? Speak plainly, or I shall assume you are the architect of this tangle of lies. Before Dubois could respond, a sharp cry pierced the air. Clara, who had ventured deeper into the greenhouse, stood frozen before a glass case housing a single, luminous flower, rare Noxembra lily, its petals glowing faintly in the dim light. Beside it, a small vial lay shattered on the stone floor, its contents seeping into the soil. The air grew heavy with a bitter, acrid scent. Monsieur Poirot, Clara called, her voice trembling. This smells like poison. Poirot was at her side in an instant, his handkerchief pressed to his nose as he examined the scene. The vial's remnants bore traces of a viscous liquid, and the lily's roots were tinged with an unnatural sheen. Mon Dieu, he murmured, his mind alight with connections. It's no accident. Someone has tampered with the Noxembra lilia plant, known for its medicinal properties, but deadly in the wrong hands. He turned to Dubois, whose face had paled to the color of the greenhouse's misted glass. Sire, were you aware of this poison? Or is this another secret you claim to be coerced into keeping? I swear, I didn't know. Dubois protested, his voice cracking. I only came here to harvest sap, not this. Poirot's gaze softened, but only slightly. Then we must act swiftly, for I fear this poison was meant for someone. In this manner, he knelt beside the vial, his gloved fingers carefully lifting a fragment. The label, barely legible, bore the initials E.B. Eleanor Blackthorne. A chill ran through him. Was the widow herself the target, or was this a cruel misdirection? Clara, Poirot said, his tone urgent, fetch the household staff. We must ensure no one ingests anything from this greenhouse until I have tested its contents, and you, Monsieur Dubois, will remain here. Your role in this affair is far from clear. As Clara hurried out, Poirot's mind churned. The Noxembra lily was not native to Devon. It had been cultivated deliberately, its presence a testament to someone's calculated intent. He recalled a passage from the diary mentioning Lady Eleanor's fascination with rare plants, a hobby she shared with her late husband. Could the poison be linked to the trust fund, a weapon to silence those who knew too much? The greenhouse seemed to pulse with secrets, its shadows lengthening as the mist thickened outside. Poirot's investigation led him to a hidden compartment beneath the lily's case, where he found a small notebook. Its pages were filled with meticulous notes on the lily's cultivation, written in a hand he recognized as Lady Eleanor's. But one entry stood out, a recipe for a tonic. Its ingredients, including the lily's sap, combined with a rare herb ratrum. Alba. Poirot's heart quickened, for atrum alba was a deadly poison. It's often mistaken for a benign remedy. He was about to examine the notebook further when a shadow moved behind him. Spinning around, he saw only the swaying of a vine, but the air felt charged with menace. Who was there? He called, his voice steady despite the prickling at the back of his neck. No answer came, but the rustle of leaves betrayed a hasty retreat. Poirot returned to the manor, the notebook tucked safely in his coat. In the drawing room, he gathered Lady Eleanor, Clara, and Dubois, his expression grave. Madame, he addressed Lady Eleanor, your greenhouse is a garden of lies, and I fear it has borne a deadly fruit. This vial, he held up the fragment, contained a poison derived from your Noxembra lily. I must know who has access to this plant. Lady Eleanor's face paled, her composure faltering. Only I tend a greenhouse, Monsieur Poirot. The staff are forbidden, and the guests, well, they have no interest in such things. Yet someone has taken a keen interest, Poirot countered, his eyes flicking to Dubois, and I believe they intended harm. Tell me, madame, have you felt unwell recently? A headache, perhaps, or a strange taste in your tea?" Her hand trembled as she touched her throat. Yes, yesterday. Bitter taste, but I thought it was the tea leaves." Poirot's mind raced. The poison had been administered, but in a dose too small to kill yet. This was no clumsy attempt, but a calculated warning. He turned to Dubois. "Monsieur, you will tell me now who coerced you, for I believe they are the same person who planted this poison." Dubois hesitated, then whispered a name. "Caldwell, the American. He knew about my past, threatened to ruin me unless I forged the documents." Poirot's lips curled slightly, not in amusement, but in satisfaction. The threads were converging. "Very well," he said. "We shall confront Monsieur Caldwell. But first, we must ensure the safety of this household." With Clara's help, Poirot tested the manners, water, and food supplies, using a makeshift chemical analysis derived from his knowledge of herbs. The tea leaves in Lady Eleanor's private stock were tainted, confirming his suspicions. He disposed of the contaminated batch, averting further danger, but the question remained, why poison Lady Eleanor so subtly? As evening fell, Poirot stood alone in the greenhouse, the Noximbra lily glowing faintly under the moonlight. The artist's confession had resolved a forgery, but the poisoning attempt pointed to a deeper motive. He examined the notebook again, noting a cryptic reference to a delivery scheduled for the next day, a coded telegram, perhaps from an outsider. Chapter 10. The code breakers triumphed. The fog that had clung to Blackthorn Manor like a shroud for days had finally lifted, revealing a crisp Devon morning. Sunlight pierced the tall windows of the library, casting golden bars across the mahogany table where Hercule Poirot sat, a telegram in his gloved hand. His mustache twitched as his gray eyes, sharp as a falcon's, scanned the cryptic text for the third time. The coded message, discovered in the greenhouse among the artist's belongings, was no mere scribblet, was a labyrinth of intent, a puzzle begging for Poirot's unparalleled mind to unravel. Around him, the manor hummed with uneasy life. The guests, still reeling from the poisoning attempt on the artist, moved like chess pieces in a game they did not understand. Poirot, however, saw the board clearly. The telegram sender was no stranger to Blackthorn's secrets, and its contents hinted at a connection to the American businessman, Mr. Caldwell, whose brash confidence had begun to crack under Poirot's scrutiny. The little Belgian detective leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled, his mind a whirl of deductions. The trust fund, the blackmail, the poisoning, all threads in a tapestry of deception. And now, this telegram was the needle to pull. Dem tot, the message read, C meets L at dusk. Funds secured. Await signal. Gate. A series of numbers 3, 7 to 9 repeated in a pattern that seemed random to the untrained eye. But to Poirot, randomness was an illusion, a mask for order waiting to be exposed. He murmured to himself, Mon Dieu, the simplicity of it is almost insulting. But the clever ones, they hide in plain sight. The morning's gambit. Poirot rose, adjusting his impeccable pinstripe suit, and made his way to the drawing room where the guests were gathered for breakfast. The air was thick with suspicion, each glance a silent accusation. Lady Eleanor Blackthorn presided over the table, her silver hair gleaming under the chandelier, her eyes betraying a weariness Poirot had not noticed before. The playwright, Julian Harrow, sipped his coffee with forced nonchalance, while the governess, Miss Clara Wren, sat quietly, her hands folded, her secret as the illegitimate child, now known to Poirot alone. The artist, Felix Moreau, was absent, still recovering from the poisoning attempt. And Rupert, Lady Eleanor's stepson, glowered at his plate. His arrival having stirred the manor's tensions like a storm. Mr. Caldwell, however, was the picture of American bravado, his loud laugh cutting through the murmurs as he regaled the table with a tale of a Chicago deal. Poirot observed him closely. The man's broad shoulders and easy grin were a facade, but the faint tremor in his hand as he lifted his cup betrayed him. He knows I am close, Poirot thought. He fears what I will find. Mr. Caldwell, Poirot said, his voice soft but commanding, slicing through the chatter like a blade. A word, if you please, after breakfast. There is a matter of numbers that requires your attention. Caldwell's smile faltered, but he recovered quickly. Numbers, Mr. Poirot. I'm a businessman, not a mathematician, but I'm happy to humor you. The others glanced between them, sensing the undercurrent. Poirot merely inclined his head, his expression unreadable. Bon, it will be, as you say, most illuminating. After breakfast, Poirot led Caldwell to the study, a room heavy with the scent of old books and secrets. The ledger, uncovered in Chapter 4, lay open on the desk, its pages a testament to Caldwell's minor fraude, forged signature to siphon funds from the estate. But Poirot suspected more. The telegram's mention of funds secured pointed to a larger scheme, one that tied Caldwell to the elusive L and the missing trust fund. Mr. Caldwell, Poirot began, seating himself behind the desk, the telegram in hand. You are a man of ambition, n'est-ce pas? But ambition, it can lead one to steps. This telegram, it speaks of you, I think. Caldwell's jaw tightened, but he leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. A telegram. Come now, Poirot, you're fishing. I don't know anything about codes or messages. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Fishing, you say? Nan, Hercule Poirot does not fish. He hunts. And the prey, it is truth. Hi. He slid the telegram across the desk. This message mentions a C meeting an L at dusk. Funds secured, it says. Curious? No? For a man who claims only a small indiscretion with the ledger, you seem entangled in deeper waters. Caldwell's face reddened, but he held Poirot's gaze. You're barking up the wrong tree, Poirot. I admitted to the ledger business a mistake. Sure, but I'm no mastermind. You'd think I'm running some grand conspiracy. You've read too many detective novels. Poirot smiled, a small, dangerous curve of his lips. Au contraire, Mr. Caldwell. I write the novels others read. Now, let us speak plainly. The numbers 3, 7, 2, 9, they are not random. They are a code, and I, Hercule Poirot, have broken it. Cracking the code, Poirot had spent the early hours of the morning deciphering the telegram's numbers. The sequence, 3, 7 to 9, was a simple substitution cipher, each number corresponding to a letter in a key word. After testing several possibilities, Poirot had landed on bank, a word that fit both the sequence and the context of the trust fund. The numbers translated to a meeting time and place, the 3rd hour past 7, on the 2nd day of the 9th month, September 2nd, at 10 p.m. The location, Poirot deduced, was the Grove, where the map from Chapter 6 had led him to the blackmail letters. But the telegram's true revelation was its sender, a London banker named Lawrence Hargrove, known for discreet dealings with wealthy clients. The L was no mystery now. Caldwell's connection to Hargrove suggested a scheme to manipulate the trust fund for a business venture. Poirot's challenge was to prove at hand, to uncover whether Caldwell was a pawn or a player. In the study, Poirot laid out his findings with surgical precision. The numbers, Mr. Caldwell, they point to a meeting. September 2nd, at 10 in the evening, in the Grove, with a certain Mr. Lawrence Hargrove, a banker of some repute. You know him, I presume? Caldwell's bravado crumbled, his shoulders slumping. Hargrove? How look? Poirot, it's not what you think. Yes, I know him. He's a contact from a deal in London, but I didn't meet him in any Grove, and I sure as hell didn't poison anyone. Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. Calmez-vous. I do not accuse you of poison yet. But the trust fund, monsieur, it is missing. In your name, it dances. Too often in this affair. Tell me, what was your arrangement with Mr. Hargrove? Caldwell hesitated, his eyes darting to the window as if seeking escape. Finally, he sighed. All right, Poirot, you've got me. Hargrove approached me months ago. Said he could move some of Lady Eleanor's trust fund into a ventural estate across the Atlantic. Big returns. I saw a chance to make a name for myself. I forged the signature to get the funds moving, but I swear I didn't know about any blackmail or poisoning. Poirot's mustache quivered, a sign of his mind at work. In the telegram. Why does it speak of funds secured? Caldwell ran a hand through his hair. Hargrove sent it. A key said the deal was done, that the money was safe. But then things got messy. Someone started asking questions, threatening to expose the whole thing. I thought it was Rupert, stirring up trouble. I backed off, told Hargrove to halt everything. Poirot leaned forward, his voice low. And yet, monsieur, the funds are gone. Stolen, perhaps, by this someone who threatened you. Who was it? Caldwell shook his head. I don't know. Hargrove wouldn't say. Just told me to keep quiet and wait for his signal. The confrontation. Poirot's mind raced. Caldwell's confession resolved the financial scheme, but the poisoning attempt on Felix Moreau suggested a more sinister hand at work. The vial of toxin found in the artist's studio was the next clue. Poirot excused himself from the study, promising Caldwell they would speak again, and made his way to the greenhouse, where the vial had been discovered. The greenhouse was a jungle of exotic plants, their leaves glistening in the morning light. Poirot examined the spot where the vial had been hidden, tucked beneath a potted orchid. The label, barely legible, bore the name of a London medical supplier, Hargrove & Sons. The connection was unmistakable. Lawrence Hargrove was not just a banker, he was a supplier of dangerous substances, perhaps the architect of the poisoning attempt. Poirot returned to the manor, his steps purposeful. He summoned Lady Eleanor, Miss Wren, and Julian Harrow to the library, ensuring Caldwell remained under the watchful eye of the butler. The guests gathered, their faces a mix of curiosity and dread. Mies, Amos, Poirot began, standing before the fireplace, the telegram in one hand, the vial in the other. We are entangled in a web of lies. But Hercule Poirot, he sees the pattern. The trust fund. It has been manipulated by Mr. Caldwell under the guidance of a London banker, Mr. Lawrence Hargrove. This telegram proves their collusion. But there is more. Its vial. It contains the toxin used to threaten Monsieur Moreau. And its label. It bears the name of Hargrove's firm. Lady Eleanor gasped, her hand flying to her throat. Hargrove. But he was my husband's banker, a trusted man. Trusted, madame. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Trust is a fragile. The thing is broken. Monsieur Hargrove, I believe, is more than a banker. He is a puppet master, pulling strings to destabilize this estate. But why? That I must discover. Miss Wren spoke softly, her voice steady despite her pale face. Mr. Poirot, could Hargrove be the one who sent the blackmail letters? It's the ones we found in the grove? Poirot nodded. Possibility, mademoiselle. The letters, the funds, the poison all point to a mind that seeks to control through fear. But fear, it betrays itself. Sir Caldwell has confessed his part, and now we must find Hargrove. Julian Harrow, who had been silent, stood abruptly. This is madness. You're accusing a man none of us have seen, based on a scrap of paper and a bottle. Poirot, you're chasing ghosts. Poirot's gaze was icy. Ghosts, Monsieur Harrow. Nan, I chase truth, and the truth, it is close. The trail to London. Poirot wasted no time. He dispatched a telegram to his old friend, Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard, requesting information on Lawrence Hargrove. The reply came swiftly. Hargrove was indeed a banker, but his firm had been linked to questionable dealings, shell companies, discreet transfers, and, curiously, a medical supply business under a subsidiary name. The vial's label was no coincidence. Poirot decided to confront Hargrove directly. He announced to the guests that he would travel to London that afternoon, leaving the manor under the butler's supervision. Lady Eleanor protested, fearing more chaos in his absence, but Poirot was firm. "Madame, the heart of this mystery lies not in Blackthorn, but in the city. I shall return with answers." The train to London was a blur of green fields and gray thoughts. Poirot's mind churned, piecing together the puzzle. Hargrove's motives were still unclear: revenge or something more personal. The trust fund's theft was a means, not an end, and the poisoning, a distraction, perhaps, to sow discord and divert suspicion in London. Poirot navigated the bustling streets to Hargrove's office, a sleek building in Mayfair. The banker was a tall man, his silver hair and sharp suit exuding authority. He greeted Poirot with a practiced smile, but his eyes were wary. "Mr. Poirot," Hargrove said, gesturing to a leather chair. "An unexpected pleasure. To what do I owe this visit?" Poirot sat, his posture impeccable. "Monsieur Hargrove, I am here about Blackthorn Manor, a telegram, a trust fund, and a vial of poisonol bearing your name. Shall we discuss the truth, or shall I summon Scotland Yard?" Hargrove's smile vanished. "Poison, trust funds. You're mistaken, Poirot. I'm a banker, not a criminal." Poirot produced the telegram and vial, placing them on the desk. "These, monsieur, tell a different story. The code, it is broken. The funds, they are gone. And the poison, it nearly claimed a life. Speak, or I shall speak for you." Hargrove's composure cracked. He leaned back, rubbing his temples. "All right, Poirot, you're good, too good. I moved a trust fund, yes, but it was business. Caldwell was eager, and I saw an opportunity. Poison, that wasn't me. Someone used my firm's name to frame me. I swear it." Poirot's eyes never left Hargrove's. "And who, monsieur, would frame you? Who benefits from this chaos?" Hargrove hesitated, then whispered, "I don't know. But I received a nota. Threat. It said if I didn't cooperate, my family would suffer. I thought it was Caldwell, double-crossing me." Poirot's mind clicked. A threat, a frame, a mastermind still hidden. Hargrove was a piece, not the player. The chapter's resolution was near, but the final truth remained elusive. The return to Blackthorn. Poirot returned to Blackthorn Manor that evening. The vial and telegram secured in his case. Caldwell's confession had resolved the financial scheme, and Hargrove's admission confirmed his role. But the poisoning attempt, the blackmail, and the mysterious threat pointed to a deeper conspiracy, one Poirot would unravel in the chapters to come. As he stepped into the manor, the butler greeted him with a troubled look. "Mr. Poirot, a new discovery. A coded message found in the doctor's bag." Poirot's heart quickened. The game was not over. "Bean, show me this message." "The truth, it waits for no one." The chapter closed with Poirot holding the new clue, a scrap of paper with symbols that promised to unravel the next layer of Blackthorn's tangled lies. Chapter 11. The Doctor's Deception. The morning mist clung to Blackthorn Manor like a conspirator's whisper, curling around the ivy-clad walls and obscuring the distant moors. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed despite the early hour, stood at the edge of the rose garden, his sharp eyes scanning the dew-kissed petals as if they might confess the estate's secrets. His mind, however, was elsewhere, tethered to the vial of toxin he had discovered the previous evening, a small glass bottle, its label half torn, bearing the faded insignia of a medical supplier. A vial found hidden in a velvet-lined box in Mr. Caldwell's room had shifted the axis of the investigation. The poison, a rare alkaloid derived from the foxglove plant, was no mere accident. It was a silent scream of intent, and Poirot was determined to unmask its sender. Inside the manor, the air was thick with unease. The guests had gathered in the dining room for breakfast, their conversations stilted, their glances darting like startled birds. Lady Eleanor Blackthorne, regal yet pale, presided over the table with a forced smile, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup as if seeking solace in its warmth. The governess, Miss Clara Henshaw, sat quietly, her eyes downcast, but alert, her newfound alliance with Poirot, a secret shared only in subtle glances. The playwright, Mr. Julian Warwick, spun charming anecdotes to mask his nerves, while the artist, Miss Evelyn Gray, nibbled at her toast, her hands trembling slightly from the recent poisoning attempt she had narrowly escaped. Mr. Caldwell, the American businessman, maintained his brash confidence, though his eyes lingered on Poirot with a flicker of unease. Rupert, Lady Eleanor's stepson, slouched in his chair, his sullen demeanor a storm cloud amidst the forced civility. And then there was Dr. Leonard Marwood, the local physician, whose presence at the manor had been unremarkable until now. Professionalism, Poirot noted, was a mask too perfect to be trusted. Poirot entered the dining room, his polished shoes clicking softly on the oak floor. "Bonjour, Mies Amos," he greeted, his voice carrying the precise cadence of a man who knew more than he revealed. "I trust you have slept well, despite the disturbances of recent days." Lady Eleanor's smile tightened. "Mr. Poirot, you have a knack for appearing just when the air grows heavy. Have you news for us?" Poirot inclined his head, his mustache twitching slightly. "News, madame, is like a fine wine, it must be savored at the right moment. For now, I observe the truth. It reveals itself in the smallest gestures." His gaze settled on Dr. Marwood, who was buttering a scone with surgical precision. The doctor's hands were steady, his face composed. But Poirot's keen eyes caught the briefest pause of hesitation, so subtle it might have gone unnoticed by anyone else. "Dr. Marwood," Poirot said, his tone deceptively light, "you are a man of medicine, n'est-ce pas? Tell me, what do you make of a poison such as digitalis? A curious choice, Nan?" The room stilled. Miss Gray's fork clattered against her plate, and Mr. Caldwell's jaw tightened. Dr. Marwood met Poirot's gaze, his blue eyes calm but guarded. "Digitalis, potent substance, Mr. Poirot, used in small doses to treat heart conditions, but in excess it can be deadly." "Why, do you ask?" Poirot smiled, a small, enigmatic curve of his lips. "Curiosity, doctor, a detective's vice. I found myself wondering about a certain vial, labeled with the mark of a medical supplier. It is, I believe, a tool of your trade." The doctor's composure faltered for a fraction of a second, his knife scraping the scone with a faint screech. "I'm not sure I follow, Mr. Poirot. My medical bag contains many such vials, but none, I assure you, are out of place." "Raymond." Poirot's voice was velvet over steel. "Then, perhaps, you'd indulge me by examining your supplies. Small matter, but one that may bring clarity to our tangled affairs." The guests exchanged uneasy glances, but Dr. Marwood nodded, his expression unreadable. "Of course, after breakfast, I'll fetch my bag." Poirot took his seat, his mind already mapping the web of motives and opportunities. The vial's discovery had been no accident. It was a breadcrumb in a trail that led to the heart of Blackthorn. Manners, secrets. The poisoning attempt on Miss Gray, thwarted by Poirot's quick intervention, had been a desperate act, but by whom? And why? The doctor's involvement was a new thread, one that Poirot intended to unravel with his characteristic precision. After breakfast, the group reconvened in the library, a cavernous room lined with leather-bound volumes and heavy drapes that muted the morning light. Dr. Marwood placed his medical bag on a mahogany table, its worn leather creaking as he opened it. The guests stood in a loose semicircle, their curiosity tinged with suspicion. Poirot, standing near the fireplace, watched the doctor's every move, his hands clasped behind his back. "Now," Dr. Poirot began, "let us examine your supplies. A simple task. We seek only to confirm that all is as it should be." Dr. Marwood began unpacking his bag, laying out vials, syringes, and bandages with methodical care. "I keep a meticulous inventory," he said, his voice steady. "Every item is accounted for." Poirot's eyes narrowed as the doctor produced a series of glass vials, each labeled with neat handwriting. "In the digitalis," he prompted. Marwood hesitated, then reached deeper into the bag, withdrawing a small wooden box. He opened it to reveal a row of vials, one of which matched the description of the one Poirot had found: clear glass, half torn. Label: the faint insignia of a London supplier. "This is my digitalis," Marwood said, holding it up. "As you can see, it's intact." Poirot stepped forward, his fingers brushing the vial as he examined it, interested. "I must ask, where is the vial that is not in your possession? The one, perhaps, that found its way to Mr. Caldwell's room?" The room erupted in murmurs. Caldwell's face reddened. "Now, hold on, Poirot. You're not pinning this on me. I told you, I don't know how that vial got there." Marwood's brow furrowed, his composure cracking. "Are you suggesting someone stole from my bag? That's absurd. I keep it locked at all times." "Locked, you say?" Poirot's tone was almost playful. "Yet locks, they are not infallible. Tell me, doctor, when did you last check your inventory?" Marwood's jaw tightened. "Last night, before retiring. Everything was in order." Poirot tilted his head, his eyes gleaming. "And yet, a vial of digitalis, identical to yours, was used in an attempt to poison Miss Grey. A curious coincidence, Nan." Miss Grey, standing near the window, shivered despite the fire's warmth. "I still don't understand why anyone would target me," she said, her voice fragile but resolute. "I have done nothing to anyone here." Poirot turned to her, his expression softening. "Mademoiselle, the truth, it is often hidden in the shadows of others' motives. Rest assured, Hercule Poirot will bring it to light." He returned his attention to Marwood. "Doctor, you claimed the vial was stolen? Yet you are the only one with access to such a substance. Pourquoi then would you not report its absence?" Marwood's hands clenched, his knuckles whitening. "Because I didn't know it was missing. I swear, Mr. Poirot, I have no part in this." Poirot paced slowly, his steps measured. "Court, let us assume for a moment that you speak the truth. The vial was stolen. Who had the opportunity? Who, perhaps, has been close to you, close to your bag?" The governess, Miss Henshaw, spoke up, her voice steady. "Dr. Marwood treated Lady Eleanor's cold 2 days ago. I saw him leave his bag unattended in the drawing room while he fetched water." Lady Eleanor's eyes widened. "Clara, you never mentioned this." "I didn't think it mattered," Miss Henshaw replied, her gaze meeting Poirot's. "But now, ... it might." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The drawing room had been a hub of activity that day, with nearly every guest passing through. The opportunity was there, but the motive remained elusive. He turned back to Marwood. "Doctor, you are a man of science. You value precision. So tell me, with precision, who is it you protect?" Marwood's face paled. "Protect? Well, I'm not protecting anyone." Poirot's voice dropped, each word sharp as a scalpel. "Monsieur, You lie, and Hercule Poirot, he does not tolerate lies. Your hesitation, your glances, they betray you. You know more than you say. Speak, or the truth will be extracted in ways less ... pleasant. The room was silent, the air heavy with anticipation. Marwood's shoulders slumped, and he sank into a chair, his hands covering his face. Very well, he whispered. I'll tell you, but it's not what you think. Dr. Marwood's confession unfolded like a slow, reluctant tide. He spoke of a patient, a young woman from the nearby village of Thornwick, who had come to him months ago, desperate and destitute. Her name was Eliza, a seamstress with no family, no means, and a secret that could ruin her. She had been involved with a wealthy man, Marwood hinted, connected to Blackthorn Manor. When Eliza fell ill, Marwood treated her, keeping her secret out of compassion. But the vial of digitalis, he admitted, had been taken from his bag, not stolen. But Gavin, I gave it to her, Marwood said, his voice barely audible. She begged for something to help her sleep, to ease her pain. A diluted dose would be harmless. I never imagined. Poirot's eyes narrowed. You gave a deadly poison to a woman in distress. Cure, doctor. Your compassion is a curious thing. Here, man, this woman, this Eliza, she is the one who attempted to poison Miss Grey. Marwood shook his head vehemently. No, Eliza would never. She's gentle, broken. She left Thornwick weeks ago. I don't know where she is. Poirot's mind churned. The doctor's story was plausible, but incomplete. A woman scorned, a vial of poison, a manor full of secrets. There was a connection, a thread he had yet to grasp. This Eliza, he said, who was the man she loved? Speak his name. Marwood's lips trembled, but he remained silent. Poirot stepped closer, his presence commanding. Cassier, you shield someone close, someone in this very room, perhaps, or someone who has been here, lurking in the shadows of Blackthorn Manor. The silence was shattered by a sharp cry from Lady Eleanor. Enough of this, she exclaimed, rising from her chair. Dr. Marwood, if you know something about my husband's past, you must speak. This manor has been plagued by secrets for too long. Marwood's eyes darted to Rupert, who sat rigid, his fists clenched. It wasn't your husband, Lady Eleanor, Marwood said softly. It was ... someone else. Poirot's gaze followed Marwood's, landing on Rupert. The stepson's face was a mask of fury, but his eyes held something else, fear. Monsieur Rupert, Poirot said, his voice deceptively gentle, you have been silent for much of this affair, yet the threads of this mystery seem to circle you. Tell me, what do you know of this Eliza? Rupert's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Miss Henshaw, however, stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. Rupert, if you know something, you must tell Mr. Poirot, for all our sakes. Rupert's eyes flashed, but he relented. Fine, I knew Eliza. She was a mistake, a dalliance, nothing more. I ended it months ago. She was heartbroken, but I never thought she'd go this far. Poirot's mustache twitched. A dalliance, you say? And yet, a woman scorned, she takes a vial of poison and vanishes. Curio, tell me, monsieur, did you know she was in Thornwick, seeking help from Dr. Marwood? Rupert's face paled. I swear, I didn't. Poirot turned back to Marwood. Doctor, you have protected this young man. You knew of his connection to Eliza, and yet you gave her the means to harm another. Why? Marwood's voice was barely a whisper. Because I thought it was over. I thought she was gone. Never imagined she'd come back. The confession resolved the mystery of the vial's origin, but it opened a new chasm of questions. Poirot dismissed the guests, asking them to remain in the manor while he pursued the next lead. The doctor's deception, while not malicious, had been reckless, and Poirot suspected there was more to Eliza's story. A woman scorned, a poison in hand, and a manor teeming with secrets. There was a pattern, a design that Poirot was determined to uncover. He retreated to the study, spreading out his notes on the mahogany desk. The vial, the ledger, the letters, the glove, the diary, the telegram all were pieces of a puzzle. And now Eliza was a new piece, a shadow moving through the manor's history. Poirot's fingers traced the edge of the vial, his mind racing. The doctor's bag, he realized, held one final clue-coded message, tucked into a hidden compartment that he had glimpsed during the examination, but not yet deciphered. He retrieved the slip of paper, its cryptic symbols taunting him. The code was unlike the telegram he had cracked earlier. It was a substitution cipher, elegant in its simplicity, but devilish in its complexity. Poirot lit a lamp, his eyes narrowing as he worked, his pencil scratching across a notepad. Hours passed, the manor settling into an uneasy quiet, until at last, the code yielded its secret. The message read, "The heirloom is the key. Trust no one." Poirot leaned back, his mind alight. The heirloom, the stolen sapphire brooch that had sparked this investigation, was more than a trinket. It was a symbol, a catalyst, and perhaps the final piece of the puzzle. But who had written the message, and why was it hidden in Marwood's bag? Was Eliza truly gone, or was she closer than anyone realized? As the clock struck midnight, Poirot rose, his resolve unshaken. The doctor's deception had been laid bare, but the true betrayal, the one that bound the manor's secrets together still, lay hidden. He slipped the coded message into his pocket, his steps purposeful as he made his way to the drawing room where a new confrontation awaited. The day passed in a flurry of preparation. Poirot, with the precision of a chess master, orchestrated every detail. He instructed Grayson to send a message to Finch via a courier in the village, specifying a meeting in the manor's conservatory. At midnight, the conservatory, with its glass walls and sprawling ferns, was an ideal stage open enough to observe, private enough to ensnare. Poirot enlisted Miss Langley and Mr. Harrow to keep watch from the shadows, their loyalty now assured. After his earlier interventions, Lady Eleanor, though shaken, agreed to remain in her room, guarded by Caldwell. Brash confidence made him an unlikely but effective protector. As midnight approached, the manor was cloaked in silence, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. Poirot stood in the conservatory, his silhouette framed against the moonlit glass. He had chosen his position carefully, near a cluster of orchids that concealed the small table where he placed the sapphire brooch, its facets glinting like a lure. Grayson stood nearby, his hands clasped tightly, his eyes darting to the shadows. The clock struck 12, its chimes echoing through the manor. A figure emerged from the darkness, cloaked in a long coat, a hat pulled low over their face. "Grayson," the figure hissed, their voice low and guttural. "You'd better have something worth my time." Poirot stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Monsieur Finch, I presume, or should I say, Monsieur Reginald Tate, late, of London, known to the authorities as a purveyor of secrets and a master of disguise." The figure froze, then slowly removed their hat, revealing a sharp-featured man with cold, calculating eyes. "Poirot," he said, a sneer curling his lip, "I should have known you'd meddle. But you're too late. The brooch is mine, and Grayson's. Secrets will ruin him." Nan, Poirot said, his tone almost pitying. "You underestimate Hercule Poirot. The brooch is here, but it is a trap, as are you. Langley, Mr. Harrow, s'il vous plaît." From the shadows, the governess and the playwright emerged, each holding a lantern that cast a harsh light on Tate's face. Grayson, emboldened by Poirot's presence, stepped forward. It's over, Tate. I've told them everything. Tate's sneer faltered, but he lunged for the brooch. Poirot, with surprising agility, seized his wrist, twisting it gently but firmly. You will not escape, monsieur. The police are already on their way, alerted by a telegram I sent this afternoon. Tate struggled, but Harrow and Miss Langley restrained him, their faces set with determination. Poirot retrieved the brooch, holding it up to the moonlight. This, Monsieur Tate, was your undoing. You believed you could manipulate loyalty, greed, fear, but you did not account for the little gray cells of Hercule Poirot. As the police arrived, their boots crunching on the gravel outside, Poirot handed the brooch to Lady Eleanor, who had joined them, her face a mix of relief and sorrow. Thank you, Monsieur Poirot, she said softly. You've saved more than my heirloom. You've saved my trust. Poirot bowed slightly, his mustache twitching with a faint smile. It is my duty, madame, to untangle the lies that bind us. But one question remains. Why did Monsieur Tate target Blackthorn Manor? Tate, now handcuffed, glared at Poirot. You think you've won, Poirot? This was never about the brooch. Tia, it was about Eleanor. Husband, ruined my family, drove my father to ruin with his schemes. I wanted her to feel the same betrayal, the same loss. Poirot nodded, his expression somber. Revenge, Monsieur Tate, is a poison that destroys the one who wields it. You have woven a tangle of lies, but they have ensnared only you. As the police led Tate away, the guests gathered around Poirot, their faces a mix of awe and gratitude. Grayson, his head bowed, murmured an apology to Lady Eleanor, who placed a hand on his shoulder. You were weak, Grayson, but you helped make this right. Stay, and let us rebuild. Chapter 12. The betrayal revealed the morning light filtered through the heavy drapes of Blackthorn Manor, casting long, wavering shadows across the oak-paneled dining room. Hercule Poirot sat at the head of the table, his small, fastidious hands folded neatly before him, his mustache impeccably groomed. In his eyes, those sharp, green-gray eyes, scanning the assembled guests with a quiet intensity. The air was thick with unspoken accusations, the kind that clung to the walls like the damp of the Devon fog. Each guest, from the brash American businessman Caldwell to the secretive governess, Miss Langley, sat rigid, their faces a gallery of unease. The events of the past days, the vandalism, the blackmail, the poisoning attempt, had woven a tapestry of distrust. And now Poirot was ready to unravel its most crucial thread. The butler, Mr. Grayson, stood by the sideboard, his posture as stiff as the starched collar of his uniform. His hands, usually steady as they poured tea or arranged silverware, betrayed a faint tremor as he adjusted a tray of scones. Poirot had noticed this tremor the previous evening when Grayson had lingered too long near the library door, his ear tilted as if to catch a whispered secret. It was a small detail, but to Poirot, small details were the bricks of truth. Amos Poirot began, his voice smooth yet commanding, like a conductor raising his baton before a symphony. We have gathered here to confront a most troubling matter. The theft of Lady Eleanor's heirloom, a sapphire brooch of exquisite value, is but the surface of a deeper treachery. Each of you has played a role in this drama, knowingly or not, but today, Hercule Poirot will reveal the one who has spun the web of deceit. A murmur rippled through the room. Lady Eleanor, her silver hair pinned elegantly, gripped the arms of her chair, her eyes darting to Grayson. The playwright, Mr. Harrow, leaned forward, his charming smile replaced by a wary frown. Miss Langley, the governess, clutched a handkerchief, her knuckles pale. Lee Caldwell, the American, seemed unfazed, sipping his coffee with a smirk that suggested he believed himself above suspicion. Poirot rose, his diminutive frame somehow filling the room with authority. He paced slowly, his polished shoes clicking against the polished floor. "Let us begin with the facts," he said, raising a finger. "The brooch was last seen in a locked display case in the drawing room. Yet it vanished without a trace of forced entry. This suggests an intimate knowledge of the manners, routines, and access to its keys. Who, then, could have such knowledge?" All eyes turned to Grayson, who froze, his hand hovering over a teapot. "Mr. Poirot," he said, his voice steady but strained, "I assured you. I have served Lady Eleanor faithfully for 20 years. I would never—" "Patience, Monsieur Grayson," Poirot interrupted, his tone gentle but firm. "Hercule Poirot does not accuse without evidence. But let us consider. You are the keeper of the keys, the orchestrator of the manor's daily rhythm. You know when the maids clean, when the guests dine, when the house sleeps. And yet you claim ignorance of a theft that could only have been committed by one with such intimacy." Grayson's face paled, but he said nothing. His lips pressed into a thin line. Poirot continued, his voice now a velvet blade. "Last night I observed you, Monsieur Grayson. You lingered near the library, where a most curious discovery was made, a coded message hidden in the doctor's bag that spoke of payments for secrets. Secrets, Mies, Amos, that could only come from within these walls." The room erupted in whispers. Dr. Marrow, the local physician, flushed red. "That's preposterous," he exclaimed, slamming his fist on the table. "My bag was tampered with. Told you, Poirot, the vial of toxin was stolen." "Indeed," Dr. Poirot said, raising a hand to quell the outburst. "And yet the message in your bag was written in a cipher that matches one found in the butler's quarters. A coincidence, perhaps?" Nan, Hercule Poirot does not believe in coincidences." Grayson's composure cracked. He took a step back, his hand brushing against the sideboard, knocking a spoon to the floor with a clatter. "This is absurd," he stammered. "I've done nothing but serve this household." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Then explain, Monsieur Grayson, why your ledger, yes. I have examined. It shows payments to an account in Exeter, an account linked to a certain Mr. Finch, a name that appears in no guest list but is known to the local innkeeper as a shadowy figure who asks many questions about Blackthorn Manor." The guests gasped. Lady Eleanor's hand flew to her throat, her emerald eyes wide with betrayal. "Grayson," she whispered, "how could you?" Poirot held up a hand, his expression one of measured calm. "Let us not rush to judgment, Madame. Monsieur Grayson, I offer you a chance to speak. Tell us, who is this Mr. Finch, and why have you betrayed the trust of this house?" Grayson's shoulders slumped, his face a mask of defeat. He sank into a chair, his hands trembling openly now. "I had no choice," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "He came to me months ago, this Mr. Finch. He knew things about my past, about a mistake I made long ago. He threatened to expose me, to ruin my life here. He demanded information, Lady Eleanor's habits, the guests' secrets, the layout of the manor. In exchange, he paid me small sums at first, then larger. The brooch, he insisted I take it, said it was payment for his silence." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "And so you stole the brooch, knowing its value to Lady Eleanor, not just in pounds, but in sentiment. A cruel act, Monsieur Grayson, for one who claims loyalty." "Didn't want to," Grayson cried, his voice breaking. "I tried to stop, but he kept demanding more. He said he'd tell everyone, Lady Eleanor, the village, even the police, about my past. I couldn't bear it." Poirot turned to the guests, his gaze sweeping over them like a searchlight. "This Mr. Finch is no ordinary blackmailer. He is a puppeteer, pulling the strings of many here. The vandalism of the portrait, The blackmail letters, the forged documents all bear his influence. But who is he, this phantom who manipulates from the shadows? Miss Langley spoke up, her voice trembling but resolute. Koya? Could he be the same person who tried to poison Mr. Harrow? The vial in the doctor's bag? Perhaps it was Finch's doing to silence someone who knew too much. Astute, Mademoiselle Poirot said, nodding approvingly. The poison, the brooch, the secret saw are threads in the same web. But to catch the spider, we must lay a trap. Poirot turned to Grayson, his voice now sharp as a blade. Sir Grayson, you will assist me. You will contact this Mr. Finch and arrange a meeting here tonight. Tell him you have more secrets to sell, secrets that will fetch a high price. Hercule Poirot will be waiting. Grayson nodded, his face ashen. I'll do it, Mr. Poirot. I'll make it right. Chapter 13. The masterminds masked. The morning mist clung to the rolling hills of Devon, wrapping Blackthorn Manor in a shroud of secrecy that seemed to mirror the tangled web of deceit. Hercule Poirot had unraveled over the past days. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and fading roses, and the manor's ivy-clad walls loomed like silent sentinels guarding their secrets. Poirot, impeccable in his tailored suit and polished shoes, stood at the edge of the gravel drive, his sharp gray eyes fixed on the horizon. In his hand, he held the rare coin, a small, tarnished object that had emerged as the final piece in the intricate puzzle of Blackthorn Manor. Its etched surface, bearing the crest of a long-defunct trading company, was no mere trinket. It was the key to unmasking the mastermind who had orchestrated the estate's chaos. The coin had been discovered in the locked study, tucked beneath a false panel in Lady Eleanor's desk, a place where no casual guest would think to look. Its presence was no accident, Poirot knew. It was a signature, a taunt left by someone who thrived on the thrill of deception. The coin's origin pointed to a figure who had vanished from the manor. Early in the investigation, a mysterious guest, introduced as Mr. Lionel Grayson, a supposed antiquarian with a penchant for rare books. Grayson had been a fleeting presence, charming yet elusive, slipping away after the first night with a vague excuse about urgent business in London. His absence had gone unremarked amidst the flurry of accusations and discoveries. But Poirot's meticulous mind had not forgotten him. The coin, with its distinctive crest, matched the description in the butler's confessional. Came in from a shadowy contact who had manipulated the estate's secrets. Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile as he slipped the coin into his waistcoat pocket. Mon ami, he murmured to himself. You thought to outwit Hercule Poirot, but the little gray cells, they do not rest. His task now was clear. Tracked Grayson to his hiding place and exposed the truth. The trail led to the Black Swan Inn, a quaint but weathered establishment in the nearby village of Ashford, where Grayson was rumored to have taken refuge. Poirot's instincts told him this was no ordinary con artist. The precision of the schemes, the forged ledger, the blackmail letters, the planted clues suggested a mind as calculating as his own, one that delighted in the game of cat and mouse. The Black Swan Inn sat at the edge of Ashford, its timbered facade sagging under the weight of centuries. The interior was dim, with low beams and a fire crackling in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the worn oak tables. Poirot entered with his usual air of quiet authority, his cane tapping lightly on the flagstone floor. The innkeeper, a stout man with a florid face, looked up from polishing a glass, his expression wary. Monsieur Poirot began, his voice smooth as velvet. I seek a gentleman who may be staying here. Mr. Lionel Grayson, an antiquarian of some repute. He is, perhaps, fond of rare coins. The innkeeper's eyes narrowed, but he nodded toward a corner table where a man sat alone, over a leather-bound notebook. The figure was dressed in a nondescript tweed coat, his face half hidden by a wide-brimmed hat. But Poirot's keen gaze missed nothing. The nervous tap of his fingers, the slight tilt of his head, as if listening for danger. This was no antiquarian. This was a man who wore masks as easily as others wore clothes. Poirot approached, his demeanor polite but unyielding. "Mr. Grayson, I presume, or should I address you by another name?" Hercule Poirot has a way of uncovering the truth, you see. The man's head snapped up, revealing sharp blue eyes and a face lined with the kind of cunning that comes from years of outsmarting others. He recovered quickly, offering a disarming smile. "Monsieur Poirot, what a surprise. I'm afraid you've caught me at a disadvantage. Care for a drink? The local cider is quite fine." Poirot waved a hand dismissively, seating himself across from Grayson without invitation. "Nan, merci. I am here, not for cider, but for answers. The coin, monsieur, it is yours, is it not?" A curious choice to leave such a distinctive mark at Blackthorn Manor. Grayson's smile faltered, but he leaned back, feigning nonchalance. "A coin. I collect many things, Monsieur Poirot." "You'll have to be more specific." Poirot's eyes gleamed with the quiet intensity of a predator closing in. He produced a coin, placing it on the table with deliberate care. "This, monsieur, is no mere collectible. It is a signature, a breadcrumb you could not resist leaving. You are the architect of the chaos at Blackthorn Manor, the forged ledger, the blackmail letters, the stolen heirloom. Shall I continue?" Grayson's fingers twitched, but he maintained his composure. "You're a clever man, Poirot, but you're fishing. I left the manor days ago. Whatever mischief you're investigating, I've no part in it." Poirot leaned forward, his voice low and precise. "You were too modest, monsieur." The butler. He spoke of a contact who paid him in rare coins. The artist, coerced into forging documents, described a man with your exact mannerisms. In the coin tells its own story. It bears the crest of the East India Trading Company. Dissolved in 1874, a relic you could not have acquired by chance. You are no antiquarian, Mr. Grayson. You are a con artist, a puppeteer, pulling the strings of Blackthorn Manor. For a moment, silence hung between them, thick as the fog outside. Then Grayson laughed, a sharp, mirthless sound. "Bravo, Poirot, you've done your homework. But what proof do you have? A coin? A butler's word? Hardly enough to drag me before a magistrate." Poirot's smile was serene, almost pitying. "Proof, monsieur, is in the details. The little gray cells, they piece together what others overlook. But I am not here to arrest you yet. I offer you a chance to confess, to untangle the lies before they strangle you." Grayson's eyes darted to the door, calculating his odds. Poirot, ever observant, noted the tension in his shoulders, the slight shift of his weight. "You will not run, monsieur," he said softly. "The innkeeper, he is a friend of Lady Eleanor's, and the village constable is not far. Let us speak as gentlemen. Tell me why. Why Blackthorn Manor? Why Lady Eleanor?" Grayson hesitated, his facade cracking like thin ice. Finally, he sighed, slumping in his chair. "You're relentless, aren't you? Fine, I'll give you the story not because I'm afraid, but because I'm tired of running. It started 20 years ago with Eleanor's husband, Sir Henry Blackthorn." Terrell's mustache twitched, a sign of his growing interest. "Continue." Monsieur Grayson's voice grew bitter, his eyes distant. "Sir Henry was a ruthless man, Poirot, a titan of industry who crushed anyone in his path. I was a young clerk in his company, ambitious, naive. I uncovered the scheme Sir Henry was embezzling funds, ruining lives to line his pockets. When I threatened to expose him, he didn't just fire me, he destroyed me. Forged evidence, branded me a thief. I lost everything: my career, my name, my family. Poirot's expression remained impassive, but his mind was racing, connecting Grayson's tale to the diary's revelations about Sir Henry's misdeeds. And so, you sought revenge. Not against Sir Henry, who was dead, but against his widow. Grayson's jaw tightened. Eleanor knew. She profited from his crimes, lived in luxury, while I scraped by in the shadows. I wanted her to feel what I felt: fear, uncertainty, betrayal. The heirloom, the ledger, the letter said, was all to unravel her perfect little world. Poirot nodded slowly, his fingers steepled. A vendetta, then. But you did not act alone. The butler, the artist, the journalist, they were your pawns. How did you ensnare them? Grayson smirked, a flicker of pride in his eyes. People are predictable, Poirot. The butler was greedy, the artist desperate, the journalist hungry for a scoop, a few coins, a few promises, and they danced to my tune. The governess was a surprise, though her connection to Sir Henry complicated things. I didn't expect an illegitimate heir. Poirot's gaze sharpened. And the poisoning, the vial found in the doctor's bag. A miscalculation, Grayson admitted. The artist was wavering, threatening to confess. I needed to scare him, not kill him. The doctor was a convenient scapegoat. His supplies were easy to tamper with. Poirot leaned back, his mind assembling the final pieces. Grayson's confession was thorough, but something nagged at him, a detail unspoken, a motive deeper than revenge. You speak of justice, monsieur, but your actions suggest greed. The trust fund, the heirloom, were they not also temptations? Grayson's eyes flickered with something akin to shame. Maybe. The trust fund was a fortune, Poirot, enough to start over, to reclaim what was taken from me, right? But it was never just about the money. It was about making them pay. Poirot rose, his movements deliberate. You have spun a fine tale, monsieur, but tales alone do not absolve. You will come with me to Blackthorn Manor. Lady Eleanor deserves to hear your confession, and the constable will decide your fate. Grayson's shoulders sagged, the fight draining from him. You win, Poirot. But tell me, how did you know? It was me. The coin wasn't enough. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The coin was a clue, but it was your absence that betrayed you. A man who flees the scene of his own chaos is either a coward or a strategist. You, monsieur, are the latter. But even the cleverest strategist cannot outrun the truth. The return to Blackthorn Manor was swift, the village constable in tow. Poirot had telephoned ahead, ensuring Lady Eleanor and the guests were gathered. In the drawing room, Grayson was led in, his hands bound. The room buzzed with murmurs. Lady Eleanor, regal, despite her weariness, fixed him with a steely gaze. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice steady, is this the man who has tormented my home? Oui, madame, Poirot replied, stepping forward. Mr. Lionel Grayson, or whatever name he chooses, is the mastermind behind the schemes that have plagued Blackthorn Manor. His confession, given freely, reveals a tale of revenge rooted in the sins of your late husband. The governess, pale but composed, clutched the diary she had claimed as her birthright. The artist, still shaken from the poisoning attempt, avoided Grayson's gaze. Caldwell, the American businessman, muttered something about justice, while Rupert, Lady Eleanor's stepson, glowered from the corner. Poirot recounted Grayson's story, weaving together the coin, the butler's betrayal, the forged documents, and the blackmail letters. Each revelation drew gasps or nods from the guests, their own roles in the drama laid bare. Lady Eleanor listened in silence, her face a mask of sorrow and resolve. When Poirot finished, she rose, her presence commanding. Mr. Grayson, you sought to punish me for my husband's wrongs, but I am not him. Your actions have hurt innocence, the governess, the artist, even my staff. For that, you will answer. Grayson met her gaze, his defiance gone. I'm sorry, Lady Eleanor, not for hating him, but for the rest. The constable led Grayson away, the clink of handcuffs echoing in the hushed room. Poirot turned to Lady Eleanor, bowing slightly. Madame, the truth is restored, but the wounds remain. I trust you will find peace. She nodded, a tear glinting in her eye. Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. Your clarity has saved us. As the guests dispersed, Poirot lingered, his gaze drifting to the coin in his hand. The case was nearly closed, but one task remained, to unveil the full truth to all, to ensure no shadow lingered over Blackthorn Manor. The final reckoning awaited in the drawing room, where every clue would find its place, and every lie would be laid to rest. Poirot's mustache twitched again. The coin, Madame. It was a rare piece, minted in a limited run, traceable to a collector in London. I dispatched inquiries through my friend, Inspector Japp, and learned that Tate had been seen at an inn near Exeter, posing as a traveling merchant. Set a trap, inviting him to return under the guise of a business proposition. He could not resist the lure of further profit. When he arrived, I confronted him with the evidence, the coin, the telegram. The letters, in his own arrogance, betrayed him. He confessed, believing he could charm his way free. But the law, it is not so easily swayed. Rupert stepped forward, his voice sharp. And the trust fund? Is it gone? Poirot shook his head. Non, Monsieur Rupert. The fund, cleverly hidden by Tate in a false account, has been recovered. It will be restored to its rightful purpose, to secure the future of Mademoiselle Hale, as her father intended. Miss Hale's hands flew to her face, a sob escaping her. Lady Eleanor reached out, her hand trembling as it rested on the governess's arm. Clara, she said softly, you are part of this family now. I was wrong to doubt you. The room fell silent, the weight of reconciliation settling over them. Poirot turned to the others, his gaze softening. Each of you has been touched by this deception, but you are not defined by it. Monsieur Caldwell, your ambition led you astray, but your remorse redeems you. Monsieur Vale, your charm concealed pain, but you protected another out of love. Mademoiselle Wren, your art was misused, but your honesty has set you free. Monsieur Harrow, your loyalty was misguided, but your heart was true. And Monsieur Grayson, your betrayal was a lapse, but your service to this house may yet be your salvation. He stepped back, his hands spreading in a gesture of finality. The tangle of lies is unraveled. The heirloom is returned, the fund restored, the con artist apprehended. Blackthorn Manor stands, not as a house divided, but as a family united by the truth. Lady Eleanor rose, her cane tapping softly as she approached Poirot. Monsieur Poirot, I cannot thank you enough. You have saved more than my estate. You have saved my family. Poirot bowed, his eyes twinkling. Madame, it is the work of the little gray cells to bring order to chaos. I am but their humble servant. As the guests dispersed, their voices low with relief and reflection, Poirot lingered by the hearth, watching the flames dance. The manor's shadows seemed lighter now, the air less oppressive. He thought of Tate, now in custody, his grand scheme undone by a single coin, a small, careless detail that had betrayed him. Such was the nature of crime, Poirot mused. The criminal, no matter how clever, always left a thread for the detective to pull. The next morning, Poirot stood on the steps of Blackthorn Manor, his suitcase packed, his hat tilted, just so. Miss Hale approached, her face radiant with the newfound peace. Sir Poirot, I don't know how to thank you. You've given me more than I ever hoped for. Poirot smiled, his mustache curving upward. Mademoiselle, the truth is its own reward. But if I may offer a word of advice, cherish this family, for it is now yours. She nodded, tears in her eyes, and Poirot turned to the waiting carriage. The fog had lifted, revealing the rolling hills of Devon in all their emerald glory. As the carriage rolled away, Poirot leaned back, his mind already turning to the next puzzle, the next tangle of lies waiting to be unraveled. For in the heart of every mystery, he knew, lay the truth, patient and eternal, awaiting the keen eye of Hercule Poirot. Chapter 14. The truth unveiled. The air in Blackthorn Manor's drawing room hung heavy with anticipation, a sigh that precedes a storm breaking over a restless sea. The fire in the grand hearth crackled, casting long shadows across the gathered faces, each one taut with expectation, their secrets laid bare, yet still trembling beneath the surface. Hercule Poirot stood at the center, his small, immaculate figure commanding the room with an authority that needed no raised voice or grand gesture. His hands, clasped neatly behind his back, betrayed none of the exhilaration that coursed through his mind, for this was the moment he cherished most, the unveiling of truth, the untangling of lies so artfully woven they had nearly ensnared even him. Lady Eleanor Blackthorn sat in her high-backed chair, her silver hair gleaming under the chandelier's soft light, her composure a fragile mask over the turmoil Poirot knew she felt. The governess, Miss Clara Hale, perched on the edge of a velvet settee, her hands folded tightly, her eyes wide with a mixture of hope and dread. Rupert Blackthorn, the prodigal stepson, leaned against the mantel, his arms crossed, his jaw set in defiance, though his gaze flickered nervously toward Poirot. The American businessman, Mr. Caldwell, slouched in an armchair, his usual bravado dimmed by the weight of his exposed fraud. The playwright, Mr. Lawrence Vale, stood near the window, his charm now a brittle veneer, while the artist, Miss Daphne Wren, fidgeted with her scarf, her guilt over the forged documents still raw. Dr. Mr. Harrow sat stiffly, his medical bag at his feet, a silent reminder of the vial that had nearly cost a life. And the butler, Mr. Grayson, stood by the door, his confession of betrayal still echoing in the room's heavy silence. Poirot's mustache twitched slightly, sign to those who knew him that his mind was at its sharpest. He turned slowly, his eyes scanning each face, not with accusation, but with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel, seeking the pulse of truth beneath their guarded expressions. "Mies, Amos," he began, his voice soft yet resonant, cutting through the tension like a blade through silk. "We have journeyed through a labyrinth of deception here at Blackthorn Manor. Each of you has played a part, wittingly or not, in a tapestry of lies so intricate that even I, Hercule Poirot, was momentarily confounded. But the truth, she is, like the stars, hidden by the clouds of deceit, yet always there, waiting for the patient observer to uncover her light." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Lady Eleanor's fingers tightened on her cane, and Rupert shifted uncomfortably, his boots scuffing the polished floor. "Let us begin," Poirot continued, "with the invitation that brought me to this splendid yet troubled estate. Lady Eleanor, you summoned me to investigate a stolen heirloom, a matter you described with such vagueness that I, Poirot, knew at once there was more at stake than a mere trinket. And so it was. It's the necklace recovered in that first evening. It was but a distractional, small thread in a much larger weave." He stepped toward the fireplace, his polished shoes gleaming in the firelight. The vandalism of the portrait in the gallery, the hidden ledger, the blackmail letters, the poison vial, the cryptic map, the diary's confession, the coded telegram, the rare quinol. These were not separate crimes, but parts of a singular, audacious scheme. A scheme orchestrated by one mind, one puppet master who sought to pull the strings of Blackthorn Manor until its very foundations crumbled. A murmur rippled through the room. Miss Hale's breath caught, and Mr. Vale's hand twitched as if to protest, but Poirot raised a hand, silencing them. "Patience," si vous plaît. The truth, she requires time to be unveiled properly. Let us first consider the clues, each one a piece of the puzzle. The ledger, found in the locked study, revealed financial discrepancies, forged signatures implicating Mr. Caldwell. He turned to the American, whose face reddened. You admitted to minor fraud, monsieur, but claimed you were framed for a larger crime. And so you were. The ledger was tampered with, not to enrich you, but to distract from a greater theft. The trust fund mentioned in the late Lord Blackthorne's diary. Caldwell's shoulders slumped, relief mingling with shame. Poirot's gaze shifted to Miss Hale. The diary, belonging to Lord Blackthorne, revealed a secret that struck at the heart of this family, an illegitimate child. You, Mademoiselle Hale, confessed to being that child, seeking only recognition, not wealth. Your honesty, it was commendable, but it also illuminated the motive behind the theft of the trust fund meant for you, stolen to sow discord. Miss Hale's eyes glistened, but she held her chin high. Poirot nodded approvingly before turning to Miss Wren, the artist, Mademoiselle Wren. You admitted to forging documents for this fund, coerced by a shadowy figure. Your rare paint, found in a greenhouse, linked you to the vandalism, but it was not your hand that wielded the brush with malice. No, you were but a tool, used by one who understood your vulnerabilities. Miss Wren's fingers stilled on her scarf, her face pale but resolute. Poirot's attention moved to Dr. Harrow. The vial of toxin, monsieur, bore the mark of your medical supplier. You claimed it was stolen, and I believe you, for your deception was not in the poisoning, but in protecting another. A loyalty, perhaps, to one you thought innocent. Dr. Harrow's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he turned to the butler. And you, Monsieur Grayson, you betrayed the trust of this house, selling secrets to an unknown contact. The heirloom you stole was recovered, but your actions pointed to a greater orchestrator. One who paid you with a rare coin that led me to the final piece of this puzzle. He reached into his pocket and produced the coin, its surface glinting in the firelight. This coin, found in the study, belonged to a guest who vanished early in our teleman, known to you as Mr. Simon Tate, a charming stranger who dined with us on the first night and then slipped away like a shadow in the fog. But he was no mere guest. He was a con artist, a master of deception, and the architect of this entire charade. A gasp escaped Lady Eleanor, and Rupert straightened, his eyes narrowing. Poirot continued, undeterred. Tate, or whatever his true name may be, was not driven by greed alone. No, his motive was far more personal. Revenge against the late Lord Blackthorne, who, many years ago, ruined Tate's family through a betrayal in business, a betrayal that left Tate's father destitute and broken. Tate vowed to destroy Blackthorne's legacy, and what better way than to unravel the family from within? Poirot paced slowly, his voice rising with the cadence of revelation. He planted the seeds of chaos, the forged ledger to implicate Mr. Caldwell, the blackmail letters to torment the playwright, the stolen heirloom to distract Lady Eleanor, the poisoned vial to sow fear, the coded telegram to mislead, and the coin his one mistake to mark his presence. He used each of you, exploiting your secrets, your fears, your desires, to create a tangle of lies so complex that the truth seemed lost forever. He stopped, facing Lady Eleanor. But the truth, madame, is never truly lost. Tate's plan was to fracture your family, to steal the trust fund, and leave you in ruin. Yet he underestimated the power of order, of reason, of the little gray cells of Hercule Poirot. A faint smile touched Lady Eleanor's lips, though her eyes remained shadowed with grief. "How did you find him, Monsieur Poirot?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands.